Welcome to another Wednesday on the AM Show. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. This right here is the AM Show. We're glad to have you kickstart another day with us. So coming up shortly, right after the news, we'll be hosting political scientist, head of the European Center, the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana, Dr. Asa Asante. He joins us for the news review. And then we get into our big stories. Now, the minority in Parliament has given a 21-day ultimatum for the governor of the Bank of Ghana and his two deputies to step down, or else they will take over the Bank of Ghana and force them out by way of picketing. They accuse the governor of gross ineptitude that has led to a 61 billion Ghana cedi loss by the central bank in 2022, and among others, such as reckless expenditure. But the Bank of Ghana says the DDEP is in a major way to be blamed for the loss. We're asking this morning, is the call for heads of the governor and his deputies legitimate? What has really brought us thus far? We'll be hearing from our guests on that all-important matter. Again, over $2.7 billion worth of food, including fish, was imported into Ghana in the year 2020, according to Statistica.com. Now, this makes the nation highly food insecure. To engender food production, renewable energy and rural electrification, High Limit Group, in partnership with the government of Ghana, is embarking on a mammoth project to transform the three northern regions into a place of economic prosperity. Well, with me in the studio to tell us how this can be achieved is project head and group chief executive of High Limit Group, Emmanuel Labi. That conversation comes up. But also, leveraging U.S.-Ghana trade relations, you will hear all about the U.S.-Ghana Business Expo. We have that on our lineup as well. And later on the show, we'd love to hear from you. We're going to be articulating on a lot of pivotal, crucial matters to our national life. But what are we discussing if you're not on board? So get on board. Let's judge on these matters for God and country. Up next, the news. Do stay. Thank you for staying with us. Let's get into the AM news. And in our first story, the Deputy Chief Executive Officer in charge of operations at the Youth Employment Agency, Alhaj Ibrahim Bashir, has filed his nomination to contest the New Patriotic Party parliamentary primary in the Tempane constituency of the Upper East region. Alhaj Bashir, after presenting his paperwork, was confident of a victory in the primary and called on his supporters to be respectful of his opponents and be decorous in the campaigns leading up to the primary. Correspondent Albert Sori has more.
Alhaji Ibrahim Bashiru is a popular name in the Upper East region when it comes to his work for the New Patriotic Party. For many years, he was one of the party's most seasoned and vocal communicators on local radio. It therefore did not come as a surprise to many when he got appointed to serve as a Deputy Chief Executive Officer in charge of operations at the Youth Employment Agency under President Akufo-Addo's government. After serving in the position since the year 2017, Alhaji Ibrahim Bashiru believes he is ready for a bigger responsibility to serve the people of his home constituency of Tempane in the Parliament of Ghana. He has therefore filed his nomination to contest in the upcoming MPP parliamentary primaries scheduled to take place in September in constituencies where the party has no seats. After filing his nomination at the party's Tempane constituency office, Alhaji Bashiru addressed his supporters and explained why he was the best candidate to represent the MPP in the constituency.
Alhaji Bashiru is a trustworthy person. Alhaji Bashiru is a very humble person. Alhaji Bashiru is a very developmentally oriented person. Alhaji Bashiru is determined to change the direction of how Tempane have been governed previously and today. I want to change the direction. I want to make sure that the youth of Tempane are given the needed attention. I want to ensure that the elderly of Tempane are given the needed attention. I want to ensure the vulnerable in society, the physically challenged, the old men, the young people, that everybody is catered for under my able leadership.
He also appealed to his supporters to engage in politics of decorum.
That is why my motto is new direction, new hope. We need a paradigm shift. We need somebody who can show the way, who knows the way, who understands the basic needs of Tempandi, who understands that this is an underdeveloped community. And being somebody who was born and bred in Tempandi, I know and understand the felt needs of the people. I have advised my supporters that this is an internal contest. I have just filed my nomination to contest. My own brother will also come. Nobody should attack my senior brother, Lawyer Kwenka. He is a senior member of the party. We have worked together. We are friends. Under no circumstance should you attack my senior brother just because you support my candidature. Absolutely, that is not my character.
In this primary, Alhaji Ibrahim Bashiru will contest lawyer Joseph Dindiok Kwemka, who snatched the Timpani seat from the NDC in 2016 and also served as a deputy attorney general under President Akufo-Addo's first term. Kwemka lost the seat in the 2020 elections but has filed his nomination again to contest in the primary in his bid to try and win back the seat. It is unclear if other contenders will show up before the close of nominations on Thursday, August 10. But many believe that Alhaji Bashiru against lawyer Kwemka will be an exciting contest to watch in the upcoming NPP parliamentary primaries. For Joy News, Albert Sori, Timpani.
Let's stay on Parliament-related matters as the Speaker of Parliament, Alban Sumana Kingsford Bagbin, has disagreed with the Supreme Court's recent ruling on Article 2761 of the Constitution, which prohibits traditional leaders from engaging in active party politics. The Supreme Court, in a recent interpretation of the law, said although traditional leaders could endorse the policies of political candidates, they couldn't endorse the candidates or put themselves up for election. Addressing a forum in the Western region to mark Parliament's uninterrupted 30 years of democracy, Speaker Bagbin said the constitutional provision had only succeeded in preventing traditional leaders from participating in development.
And you heard it here, that elections to political office has now become public auctions, and money has taken center stage. Violence have been introduced into our politics more than we began. Worst of it all, the reflection or mirror or the representation of our culture and tradition has been hit hard with a constitutional provision against active participation of chiefs in politics. I don't understand what that meant. The Supreme Court have tried to explain it. Active participation. What is politics about? It's about development. What are chiefs and queens supposed to lead us to do? To develop. And then you have prohibited them and say vote for others, but don't think that you can be voted for. And you call that rule of law. Selective justice.
In our next story, the opposition NDC and its caucus in Parliament is sending fire the way of the Bank of Ghana Governor Dr. Ernest Addison for a recent report detailing severe losses made by the central bank in 2022. The group has issued a 21-day ultimatum to the governor and his deputies to leave. The bank's financial statement for last year shows more than 60 billion Ghana cedis in losses, which the minority and the NDC put down to the governor's incompetence. Kweku Asante now reports.
Following the adjournment of Parliament, the minority are taking its war against the central bank governor a notch higher. Speaking at a news conference, minority leader Dr. Kesor Atoforsen announced that if the Bank of Ghana governor and his deputies did not resign in 21 days, they will be mobilizing to occupy the central bank.
We in the NDC call for the resignation, immediate resignation of the governor of the central bank and his deputies within 21 days from today. We are resolved to embark on popular action to occupy the central bank and drive out the team of inept, callous, and criminally minded mismanagers of our finances to save the Bank of Ghana. We call on all of you that if the governor fails to act by resigning, you join us to march to occupy the Bank of Ghana in 21 days' time, to force him out and to force his deputies out.
The minority details the key reasons.
The report revealed the following astonishing facts. 1. The Bank of Ghana recorded a staggering loss of 60.8 billion Ghana cedis, which is equivalent of $6 billion US. This is twice the amount we are to receive from the recent IMF bailout. The NPP government chose the easy, reckless, lazy, and criminal part of printing money. Dr. Ernest Addison, who is now known as the printer of money, has conspired with members of economic mismanagement team, led by Alhaji Dr. Bawumia and the inept Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, aka One Program, One Bond, to destroy Ghana's central bank.
Atoforsen alleged that the central bank is aiding key government officials to illegally park money to buy votes in 2024.
It is now obvious that many more members of the Akufo-Addo, Dr. Bawumia government will likely be keeping several more millions of dollars in their bedrooms and building a war chest to illegally buy electoral votes at both party primaries and the upcoming general elections. Maybe it's not only Madam Cecilia Dapa who has kept some money in her bedrooms.
They also have a response for the central bank blaming the debt exchange program for the losses. So what will the NDC MPs do if the Bank of Ghana governor decide to still stay at post? Minority Chief Whip Gavins Kwame Agboja has some answers.
What will we do after the 21 days? They shouldn't try us. We have options, like we always say. Our options are in our head. They should not try it because we are capable of deploying options that will get him out of office by force if he refuses to go within the 21 days.
The ball is now in the court of Central Bank Governor Ernest Addison and his deputies, who have been given 21 days to pack bag and baggage and head out. Kweku Asante for Joy News, Accra.
Now, Ghana's housing deficit hit over 2 million in 2021. On the back of the lack of decent and affordable housing, which adds to the crucial issues facing the Ghanaian population. A lack of sustainable design and building material, coupled with political influence, has led to housing policy failure and public housing project delays. At the KNUST's Builders Idea Challenge event, public and private housing agencies have been directed to invest in sustainable building designs and material to address the deficit. We'll bring you that story by Clinton Yeboah later on. But let's quickly move on to our next story. And some youth of Abuabo in the Asokore Mampong municipality in the Ashanti region have called on the Inspector General of Police to caution personnel on their approach to handling issues in Zango communities. They say the recent alleged murder of Yusuf Salamuddin and the killing of the Zango 7 are among instances of unfair treatment suffered by the hands or in the hands of the police. They spoke to Joy News during a fitness walk towards Abuabo homecoming.
The death of Yusuf Salamuddin led to an attack on the Aswasi police station by some irate youth. The police, after arresting some suspects in a swoop, allegedly assaulted and abandoned the victim, whom many say was at the point of death. Baba Saki, leader of Aswasi Youth Front, believes the police have over the years acted contrary to the tenets of their professional ethics. He points to instances of arbitrary killings of Zongo youth by the police.
It's obvious that the police have different mindset towards approaching Zongo people when it comes to operation or sweeping. Because of late, we've recorded several deaths by the police having encounter with the Zongo people. If you recall, there was incident in Grove Room where two gangs killed one another, and they burnt many houses in Oforu Grove Room rather. But nothing has happened to that. There wasn't any serious operation to go and attack the youth in Oforu Grove just because they are Akans. But when they come to Zongo community, they use so many means, they use so many approaches, which is so unfair to the people of Zongo community.
The youth wants the IGP to engage his officers to review their operational approach on Zongo issues. According to Baba Saki, they will be forced to defend themselves if the killing continue.
When you look at what happened with Zongo 7, my brother, we can't forget that our boys went to certain site. As we speak, the inquiry report have not yet come out with those police who are in charge of this operation. So we, the Zongo people, are calling on IGP. We are sending a signal that the approach and manner that they use on our people is very, very unfair. And we will not sit down for that to be happening to us. Today is Shila. Yesterday it was Zongo 7. It was Audu Ninja. Tomorrow it could be me. It could be my brother. So before it got to my turn, we would stand and defend ourselves.
The chief of Islam of Zongo, Alhaji Dawood Mohammed Akani, says they have had meetings with the youth to remain calm as their concerns with the police and city authorities are resolved.
I went there when they buried the young man, and we have spoken to the police. And any struggle that comes with this with our people, our children, we have told them to always keep calm. Let's see and sit down and find the solution. You know, most of our boys, I can't say police force or something. When that's what I tell you, there are a lot of them who smokes, understand me, who smokes drugs, who do this. But the one that happened recently, there's nothing to do with that. You understand me? I'm asking our police force to always to calm down for us. You know, they are children. Sometimes you are in abroad, you can't see, we see police brutality. That's different. We are blacks. Over there, they are blacks and whites. We know their mission. Most of them don't like us, but this is our country. I advise the police force to always calm down, for they also have children. You know your children, when you are home, they can misbehave, but always we have to calm them down.
Okuma Leaks reports, read to you.
In our next story, there's looming tension in Twabodom as supporters of the opposition NDC clash with supporters of the MPP over whose efforts led to the installation of a new traffic light in the district capital. It took the timely intervention of the district police command to restore sanity as the district chief executive blocked the road in an attempt to prevent the member of parliament for the area, Elizabeth Ofosu-Ajari, from leading the contractor to the project site. Correspondent Anas Sabit witnessed the incident and came through with this report.
The timely intervention of the Twabodom Police Command saved what could have been a bloody clash between some aggrieved supporters of the Member of Parliament for Techiman North and the DCE over claims on who actually led to the installation of a traffic light at the heart of Twabodom, the district capital. The MP, lawyer Elizabeth Ofosu-Ajari, who is championing this cause as a campaign promise prior to the 2020 general elections, was prevented from entering the Twabodom township by the DCE, Ado Donko Everson, who blocked the road and ordered the police to deny her and the contractor access to the project site. This attracted the wrath of some angry youth in the area who subsequently accused the DCE of preventing developmental projects in the area.
2020 no promise yes the traffic light eba traffic light o dey eba no ye nyina ye nya tema anya hondene ye hu say car say ebubo enuanom ebubo amanfo ne eba no yenyina yenya gidie se eba be boa timamufu aboa ye to bodom krodua yi na wo DC wo kase wo ma traffic no ma because of say wa ban ne sabi e wo power ne opposition party ne prede a ne wo nwini makro no.
These aggrieved youth vow to withstand any attempt by the DCE and the NPP aimed at intimidating the MP and ask that the legislator has their full support.
Traffic light no nipa no adi kan dia ba enti ye tetima no fu nya dia enti die na wahu a wo pese wo ya de wo break omo se wo ba ba ya wo de sese ni monyam no a anyankopɔ da chemame no a MPP fo ni nguase a sese ya de bia no ometima ka ama Ghana fo ato omo ase no enti sese no chese ne ma hu hia e de basabasa yo e na omo start na mbom ya ye wo tetima no fo no de yam prima MPP aban enti tayefa hu jesu anya kwa ne ebesi sama ma MPP ahunahuna bia ni wo betima hunahuna e wo tetima no
na 3 days ka bo nipa ni me pesa mbisa DC say o pe krompuntu ana so be politics ya mfaso bia nim so because obia prempuntu o ti message DC ni say emfa nuado ba ko ye nye kroyiye because say MPP ko and NDC kwa ya the DC ya ni betena kromu ha because kromu ya.
The legislator, a former tourism minister under the Mahama regime, Elizabeth Ofosu Ejare, described the actions of the DCE as unfortunate and appealed to the president Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo to call him to order.
He called the district commander to come and make sure that everybody goes back. The district commander, a level-headed policeman, allowed all of us to come. And he said he's keeping the machines there so that tomorrow they can come and install. I think this is unfortunate. This is not proper. It shouldn't happen again. I'm calling on Nana Akufo-Addo to call the DCE to order because it is the safety and security of the people in Tobodom that we are looking for. It is not politics every day. Sometimes we must think of development. The traffic light is being sponsored by government of Ghana. What is the fight? It was the Minister for Roads and Highways that we appealed to him and he agreed for the installation of this traffic light. What is he fighting about? Much ado about nothing.
But how important is this particular traffic to the people of the Techiman North District capital?
I am concerned about the traffic light because when we were crossing, you all saw the difficulty. This is a very busy intersection. So it is proper that we get traffic light to regulate the traffic situation here. We get car knocking people down, we get accidents, but we know that once we get a traffic light here, it will be a thing of the past. So it is very important to me as their MP to ensure that they are safe, and that I know will happen.
The police, who have since moved the equipment for the installation of the traffic light to the District Police Command, are however tight-lipped on the matter and have asked the contractor to halt the installation project until further notice. Anna Sabit, Jones, Chibodom.
And that is the note on which we cap off the news. But stay with us. There's more coming your way by way of the news review. Welcome back. Time now for us to dig into the newspapers, and we're joined by political scientist and director of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana, Dr. Kwabi Asah-Asante. But before I bring him into the fray, this segment is brought to you, as always, by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Here's what they're offering you. If you're a man, you've hit over 30, over 40, they're offering you prostate screening for free. If you've never got yourself checked, you're walking on that slippery, very slippery slope. If you're a woman and you'd like to know your fertility status, also make tracks to Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic and they'll take care of you for free. They'll actually conduct the analysis for free. And here's where you can locate them. Here in Accra, They're at Spintex opposite the Shell signboard. There's Kumasi, Kronomwabwe here behind the Angel Educational Complex. There's Takrady and Aji State. That's where you can locate them. Back in the Greater Accra region, they are in Tema Community 22. There's Tichiman Hanswa and Esiama and Zima. Their call lines 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. End Point Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Well, time now for us to dig into the papers, and we have joining the conversation Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante. Good morning, Doc. Hello, Doc. Can you hear me? Okay, so Doc, if you can hear me, I figure the connection is not too good because you've been with us, but hopefully we can work on that connection and get everything sorted out quickly so we can have you join the conversation. But for those of you listening, Ghana Forward, this morning, I indulge you to shoot your messages through and let me know what you think about the minorities' stance. The 21-day ultimatum that has been given the governor of the Bank of Ghana, together with some others in the central bank, to step down, to resign, basically, over the 61 billion Ghana cedi debt that has been incurred. I mean, I don't remember the last time we incurred such a debt. But some of the points made, they point to the Bank of Ghana's recklessness and mismanagement, citing a staggering 97.4 million Ghana cedis, which was spent on foreign and domestic travels in 2022 alone. And this in itself is according to the Bank of Ghana's own annual report and financial statement. They point to the Bank of Ghana's recklessness and mismanagement, pointing to a colossal amount of 357.9 million Ghana cedis, which was spent on banking supervision, while other expenses constituted a huge 287.8 million Ghana cedis of taxpayers' money. They talk about the 60.8 billion Ghana cedi loss, which is about $6 billion, which is twice what we're going to the IMF for. And maybe just to wrap with this and not move on, maybe when Doc joins the conversation, I'll walk through more of them. The Bank of Ghana flouted its own law, Act 2002, Act 612 from the year 2002, and Amendment Act 2016, that is Act 918, which requires the governor to notify Parliament where advances to government exceed 5% of the previous year's total revenue. These are some of the matters. Now, when some of these come up, I would prefer that we discuss them dispassionately, taking off whatever political lenses we may be wearing, because I've noticed over time that whatever issues you discuss, there would be people who would definitely look at it, not from the straight and narrow, not from the middle lane, but always from NDC perspective, NPP perspective. But ask yourself, as a citizen of this land, if you look at these sums of money comparatively, do we have value for money? Those are the questions we ought to be asking. Do we have value for money? And some of the sums that we hear, not just from the Bank of Ghana, but from other institutions of state. We spent X amount, even Shraj, because yesterday I was talking about Shraj. My own friend heads that institution, but even Shraj, yesterday from the Auditor General's report, we have to look at those, the nitty-gritty in those, and that is how we are going to be able to mop up more funds for the state's kitty, which can then be used, invested in health infrastructure, in road infrastructure, in other sectors of our economy. If we don't do that, then we might as well even stop, talking about any national life or any prospects for Ghana, because then, what are the prospects, really? Well, let's get into the papers now as we still try to connect with Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante. I would think that if we can't get him on Zoom, which would be the preferred choice, we might as well hear his voice on phone, which would be the next best option. The Daily Graphic this morning. Graphic Road in sorry state. Piles of refuse on some pavements along the Graphic Road. And this is the city that is hoping to be the cleanest in Africa. It's an eyesore when you go to many parts of the country and you take a look at what is happening. But there's also the story. Lottery wins attract 10% tax. That story also there takes effect August the 15th. Then there is this other one. Ongoing BECE, WAEC picks up 7 teachers for exam malpractice. That story also making the cut. And then Parliament for serious business, Nananketsia says so. We'll be finding out why he's been saying that. On the back page of the paper, Ghana risks losing $30 million from global TB funding. And there's also drug theft, 3 Bolgatanga hospital staff remanded. That story, an interesting one, about hospital staff themselves perpetrating theft. Anyway, Doc, it's good to have you back on the conversation, this time via phone. I hope you're well.
I am very well, and yourself?
By God's grace, it's another day. I feel better than I did yesterday. I've been under the weather, but I'm grateful to God for a better day today in terms of health.
You'll be fine. I'll pray for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm grateful. I was just walking through. I don't know whether you've seen the calls of the minority for the central bank's governor to step down, but among other things, let me quickly rehash for you so we can quickly make tracks. Okay. They are saying that they're going to be literally picketing. They've given a 21-day ultimatum, following which they are going to besiege, so to speak, the central bank, calling for the bank's governor and some others to step down. And here's why. They cite a staggering, so they talk about recklessness and mismanagement, citing a staggering 97.4 million Ghana cedis spent on foreign and domestic travel in 2022 alone. And this is according to the bank's own annual report. They cite the bank's recklessness and mismanagement, where a colossal amount of 357.9 million Ghana cedis was spent on banking supervision and while other expenses constituted, and other expenses is a gray area, you don't know what exactly is there, constituted a huge 287.8 million Ghana cedis of taxpayers' money. They talk about further recklessness and mismanagement in respect of the 60.8 billion Ghana cedis that was lost on the back of the DDEP. And the equivalent of that, of course, $6 billion, and that's twice as much as we're going to the IMF for. They accuse the Bank of Ghana of flouting its own law from the year 2002, Act 612, which requires the governor to notify Parliament where advances to government exceed 5% of the previous year's total revenue. Also in their Act 918 of 2016. It goes on and on. But for you, from where you sit, is this a step at ensuring further accountability when it comes to governance and when it comes to the management of the purse of our country? Or is it just politics ad infinitum?
I'm not sure it's just politics, Ben, because, one, the Bank of Ghana was established by law.
Right.
It has to work within the framework of the law. So if the bank has its own rules and regulations guiding its conduct and it flout them with impunity, everybody must stand up and be counted on this and rise up to criticize. Right. So what you are doing is in tandem or is in line with the spirit of our Constitution, where you have the preamble of the Constitution that we believe in accountability and we believe in what probity, that holders of political power or any public office holder at a point in time you'll be called to answer questions for your actions and inactions. So I think that this is nothing but what part of the process of ensuring what good governance and ensure that there is accountability and all that. Two, if you look at the figures they are talking about, it's mind-boggling that you have travel allowances of 97.6 million, and you have other expenses which is not explained, 87.8 million Ghana. I think Ghanaians deserve answers to this. All that they are asking for is what? Answers. And that they want to ensure that those who are put in that office are answerable to the people who put them there. That's all. For me, there's nothing wrong with that.
Let's delve into the papers, and later maybe I'll run by you one of our news items this morning where a DCE and a member of parliament are fighting literally over the installation of a traffic light and whether politics hasn't simply engulfed this country to the point where we cannot see beyond our political eyebrows, so to speak. I'll bring you that tussle. I'm just noting it down so I don't forget to bring it back to you. But the Daily Graphic this morning, Graphic Road in Surrey State, lottery wins attract 10% tax, and then they talk about the ongoing BEC and Parliament for serious business in Lancaster. So let's get into the stories. Wins from lottery games, casinos, and marketing promotional raffles will now attract a 10% tax with effect from August the 15th, 2023. This means that gross winnings from all betting, gaming, lotto, and other games of chance will be subjected to a 10% withholding tax, which will be considered as a final tax. In addition, the gross gaming revenue, that is the GGR, which is the amount generated from all stakes less the winnings, will also be subjected to 20% withholding tax. The Ghana Revenue Authority is hoping to mobilize about 1.2 billion Ghana cedis in the initial stages of the implementation of the taxation of lottery operators. It's just got me thinking, and let me get to something I saw recently. I don't know the last time maybe you went anywhere to eat or something, but sometimes you look at the staggering tax build-up and you begin to wonder. Everything is being taxed. This is the latest one, taking off from August the 15th. But imagine this. Someone goes to purchase a phone. The phone is worth 1,390 cedis and 48 pesos. Now, if you look at the taxes on the phone, COVID levy, 1%, that is 13 cedis, 90 pesos. NHIL, 2.5%, 34.76 cedis. Get Fund, 2.5%, and we have our own issues with that. But recently, at least, some of that is being attached to local institutions and scholarships. That is another 34.76%. VAT, 15%, 221.09 cedis. Total taxes, 304 cedis and 52 pesos, bringing the total sum from 1,390, so let's even round it up to 1,400, to a staggering 1,695. That is the tax component. Now, here's another one, at least for those who partake in the lotteries and all of that. What do you make of it?
I think that we have been educated on nuisance tax. And I'm sure all of us are alive to this fact that these things kill what? Industrial action, industrial activities,
right.
And it doesn't ensure productivity. Apart from that, it is disincentive to work and the rest of them. Why are we still having this? I'm sure that we heard a lot from Dr. Baumia, and we expect him to do something about this. Otherwise, that talk about nuisance tax and all that, I would take it like a mere propaganda statement, which I'm not sure it is. So if that was true then, it should be true now. And that we expect that all these taxes will go down and create that enabling environment to grow their business, for people to be able to what? Make use of their meager salaries to make ends meet. We are in difficult times. So if you compound the situation with a lot of taxes, then you are sending us to our grave ahead of what the time that God has given to us. I think that is unfair, and it doesn't speak well for a government which want to really make sure that we all earn meaningful ways of living our lives. It is not fair, and the earlier they did something about this, the better.
All right, so let's get into some other stories now. Page 16 is where I am headed next. And let's just get to the 16th page. Graphic Road in Surrey State. Doc, we've had opportunity to talk about some of these scenarios, and here we are again, another one. As Accra continues with its physical infrastructural development, its streets, some of them once prestigious thoroughfares, are now a pale shadow of what they used to be in the nation's capital. The Graphic Road spanning the intersection at the Kwame Nkrumah Avenue to the Obeja-Bilamte interchange appears to have lost the shine of an acclaimed major street, now riddled with rubbish, a weedy median, malfunctioning traffic lights, and vandalized drain gratings along the stretch. It also contends with a makeshift market near the Graphic Press House and haphazard commercial ventures dotted on the pavements. Now to boot, Tons of rubbish are generated from the activities of foodstuff traders, particularly on the walkway near the Graphic Press House, and scrap dealers, while squatters add to the unsightly situation. Now, there is also an apparent stealing of metal gratings on drain chambers that allow rainwater to flow into storm drains, which is a recurring problem. You know, when you go to other countries, it is well nigh impossible for you to see stuff like this, where even the metal gratings and stuff can be stolen. No supervision, no one knows about it. And God forbid that it rains heavily, for example, Doc, and you're walking on any of these stretches. I remember there was a day it had rained heavily and roads were flooded, and I was walking. I was going to walk through a specific place. It took someone screaming at me, don't. You know why? Of course, I wasn't too familiar with that route. There was one of these drains that was open, and the person from a vantage point saw me and prompted me. Now, some of the time when I went and passed there, I saw it and realized what the person had been talking about. Imagine, so flood water taken over the place. Of course, it's water close somewhere along your legs, but you're wading through because you must get to the next point before maybe you can get a vehicle. But you don't know there's a hole there. You fall into it like that, the possibility of drowning, losing your life. But that is situation normal in Accra. I don't know.
It is very sad, Ben. Sometimes I ask myself whether we have institutions in this country. We do have, but they are on paper. Because if institutions were alive, we would not hear this. Whereas parks and gardens, for instance, we saw their problem. It appears to me they have no succession plan. That department is virtually collapsing, and there is no solution in sight. If you look at issue of planning, do we have planning department in this country? Are they up to tax? That's another difficulty. What are the city, the mayors? What are the city managers? Are they also working? It's a difficult one, because if you compare these things to advanced societies and all that, my God, you see well-arranged system, beautiful environment, and the rest of it. Is it the case that we cannot replicate same or even do better? We can, yes we can, but except that we are on holidays. We don't care a hoot. We only draw our salaries and go and sleep. It's very, very unfortunate. All those who are responsible for things of this nature, are they in this country? We throw good money out and we don't get any value for money. It's unfortunate. But I want to really remind ourselves that, look, when we continue on this trajectory, a time will come, we will destroy this society and we'll build it at a very high cost. I'm not sure that is what we want. We need to do the needful now and not postpone it.
Now, you're a lecturer, so I want to believe you'd be interested in this story. Ongoing BECE. WAEC picks up 7 teachers for exam malpractice, and the West African Examinations Council, with the assistance of security personnel, has picked up 7 teachers, one of them an invigilator at different examination centers, for their involvement in examination malpractice. The teachers were allegedly found either solving questions of the ongoing examination or with phones and tablets in their possession with answers to questions in the ongoing exam after they were captured on camera transmitting the materials to the students. One of the teachers, Flora Ashite, of the St. John Bosco Basic School, was found allegedly with a tablet containing questions and answers of the exam at the Trinity Lutheran School in Tema, while Albert Edujan, a teacher of Oxford School Complex in Dunkwa on Ofin, was apprehended while allegedly capturing images of the religious and moral education questions he had answered in a classroom located on the Dunkwa Senior High Technical School premises. For suspect Kwating Esiedu Derek, who was an invigilator at the Ashanti Nkranza JSS, he was caught allegedly with captured photos of the Integrated Science Paper 2 that he had shared on a WhatsApp group called Amabame Teachers Page, which had 21 participants, and among others. But is there any cure for exam malpractice? I mean, think of the TOEFLs, the GMATs, the GRAs in different jurisdictions, and even some of the exams I've had to sit in the past. Strenuous, very strict supervision and all of that. There are some examinations I've had to take at the British Council, for example, and you may be left there, but there are CCTV installations, there are invigilators here and there. Can we ever win this battle?
If we want to, we will be able. But if we are a society and want to stand aloof relative to this problem, then I'm afraid we're not going to win this war. Because every year is gradually becoming a ritual. We come and discuss this thing, we go to sleep. We don't do anything about it. And what is so painful that sometimes, as this year I've not had parents, you see parents going around to buy questions. And then they will stand on rooftop as moral crusaders. We need to bow our head in shame. You see teachers whose duty it is to prepare children adequately so that they can go and demonstrate knowledge on paper. See them. They themselves are corporate. You see children who are not prepared to learn because socialization where we have to inculcate values such as what? Staying away from evils such as this, and then also be encouraged by parents to do the needful at the time that it matters most. We see parents checking their responsibilities. We as a state, we have not introduced stringent measures to deal with this, because I believe that sanction regime is to relax, that people get away with this type of murder. If we are serious and a serious society, we should be able to put our foot down, and anybody who crosses the line is dealt with without any favor. But what are we doing here? We treat this case with kid gloves, and that is what has brought us here. It's a whole mix of factors, and that I believe that the GES, the Parents and Teachers Association, and the rest of them, I'm talking about stakeholders, must sit down and address it. It's a shame, and it undermines the quality of our education, and then the certificate that we churn out of this. It doesn't bode well for anybody. Go to study in other jurisdictions, you realize that there's opportunity for people to cheat, but they will shy away from this. Why can't we do that in this country and do it better? Let's start the process. It's not late. And let's make sure that we win this war once and for all.
Let's quickly take a swipe at this as we move on. Niger junta rebuffs U.S. UN-backed diplomatic overtures. And Niger's junta on Tuesday rejected the latest diplomatic mission from African countries aimed at restoring constitutional order after a July 26 coup, resisting pressure from the United States and the United Nations to come to the negotiating table. Heads of state from the Economic Community of West African States are preparing for a summit on Thursday to discuss their standoff with the Niger junta, which defied on August the 6th deadline to reinstate ousted President Mohamed Bazoum. And that is the state of affairs. Some say the Nigerian junta is pushing its luck, but others also say with the sort of institutional chaos in the sub-region, Western and Central Africa. I don't need to remind you, 7 of these coups perpetrated in Western and Central Africa since 2020. 7 of them successful out of 9 attempts, including in Guinea-Bissau. There is a tale of the tape, and I don't know what our leaders are missing. Or maybe, don't I? Maybe we do. Maybe quick reflections on what is happening so far in Niger, and then we can get a move on. Doc.
I am worried, and extremely worried about this, because we struggle to make sure that we arrive at the third wave, where from the 90s, where we had a lot of kaki leaders, I'm talking about military leaders, taking us for a ride. Thank God we had a democracy, and we are working on it gradually. It's not a perfect system, though, but we are doing our best. But so if you have soldiers coming in, then we must do self-introspection and see where we have gone wrong. All right? It is clear we don't need a soothsayer to point out issues of bad governance, issues of exclusion, issues of poverty, and the rest of them. Having said this, it is not a license for soldiers to venture into politics. If they really want to, they need to shed their uniform and become civilian and join that civilized enterprise. What we are seeing now is a decline of democracy. And for me, it's worrying because it can have negative effect on other countries that are stable. And the impact is not good for everybody. I think that all of us must continue the advocacy. We must continue to drum into the ears of people that soldiers can never save any meaningful society in terms of governance. They have their role as defenders of the constitution and the country. But in politics, look, I shy away from this because General Okran, who was one of the architects of 19th State School, has told us that the soldiers have not been trained how to govern a civilian society. And if they want to do that, they need to share their evil. And that society should not hail them. We should do everything to make sure that we restore democracy. Though it has its own problems, but for me, it is the only game in town and it's the only system that will give us hope.
Daily Guide newspaper in the next 3 to 4 minutes will be out of here. Bolga court remands drug thieves. And a story I failed to look at in the Daily Graphic newspaper. So that story is on page 6. I'll get to it. Headmaster chops BEC registration cash. And we've heard the education minister saying that headmaster is going to be hot. Cecilia, and of course that's Cecilia Dapa, stolen $1 million. Suspects bought 6 mansions and 2 cars. There's also NDC sacks Kumewu women's organizer over Allen, and minority chases Bank of Ghana governor, which I've already taken a swipe at. So I'll look at those 2 stories. I don't think the Cecilia one, I think it's clear right from the banner headline. But let's go to page 6. There's, a Bolgatanga Circuit Court has remanded in custody the 3 people arrested by police in connection with the stealing of assorted medicines from the Upper East Regional Hospital's medical store in Bolgatanga. Hey! Sumaila Amadu, the judge, remanded Rahim Fasilat Bridget Noyel, and I don't know whether that's Noyeli or Noyel, and Raymond Asoke to reappear in court on August the 22nd, 2023, after they pleaded not guilty to 3 counts of stealing, abetment, and conspiracy to steal. They were found with a taxi, with a saloon car with registration number GE 153221, carting off 12 stolen boxes of essential drugs in the car, whereas 22 more boxes of drugs labeled not for sale were discovered in the abandoned structure that they had taken it to. And maybe a quick swipe at this. Wife accused of poisoning her husband's coffee with bleach for months. Now, a wife poisoned the coffee of her estranged U.S. Air Force husband with bleach for months, according to court documents. Melody Johnson was arrested on the 18th of July after her husband submitted videos to police allegedly showing her pouring the cleaning product into his coffee machine. Quick thoughts?
Very difficult human interest stories. If you take the Ghanaian one, the good news is that they are in appropriate forum. Let the court deal with it. We'll come back. The woman poisoning, trying to poison the husband. I don't know why. It's a difficulty. But I believe that, we'll find solution to this one day.
The Finder newspaper now, fresh discoveries of how Cecilia Dapa's stolen cash was dissipated in buying properties. But then there's also $114 million needed to complete Saglemi houses. It will increase the cost of 1,506 units to $310.4 million. Yesterday, I hosted Sam George, Member of Parliament for Ningo Prampram. He says, even per the terms of the land, his family land, which was let out to government, they cannot go on this private endeavor, and that if they do, he even spoke about the fact that $7 million worth of some of the fittings and others were stolen, and at a point, his team had apprehended some police officers, national security staff, who were supposed to be protecting the facility, who were actually stealing everything from toiletries and all of that, which has led to the state of Saglemi. Now we are proposing Pokwase, but if you have one thing, you protect it before you go for another. I don't know what your take is on that. There's also repeal all laws that impede media freedom. That's according to a law lecturer. And I'll wrap with the BNFT. Debt market braces for higher government borrowing and refinancing obligations. And then GRA starts 10% tax deduction on lottery wins. There's also government takes crucial step to fortify financial management systems. So we have the Saglemi story. I think that's the major one we could look at and wrap up with, Doc.
I think for the Saglemi story, it is so unfortunate. And it's not only peculiar to Saglemi. We have other buildings languishing in the bush.
True.
Talk about the buildings of President Kufuor, the affordable buildings I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have other ones such as Seglami. We are quick to proposing things of this nature. Beautiful policy, no doubt about that. But to, carry it to its logical conclusion, we always we are found wanting. Why? If you look at the directive principle of state policy, it's saying that all government projects, and without exception, if a government starts and then loses power, the next government must continue. Is it what we are doing? We claim that we are we are people who support democracy, we are believers of rule of law and all that. But these things are all in vain. It's in theory. We don't believe it. We only throw them to deceive people into believing that we are law-abiding people and we care for them. We don't care a hoot. Because look at the resources. If you put all the resources that we have sunk into this project, I tell you, we'll not go to IMF or World Bank. Why are we doing this to ourselves? I don't know. But it's unfortunate. But we, the citizens, also, we have never been vigilant in this regard. We should make sure that government, which any party, which that is, we punish that party.
Okay.
Throw it away and bring in parties that will be able to work and then salvage these things. That is the way to go.
Thank you, Doc. Always refreshing catching you on a Wednesday morning. And I wish you the very best of the day. I don't know, are you in that exam period as well?
Yes, we are writing.
Right.
We are writing.
Right.
And we are vigilant. And we are, as always, live on, you can trust when we are writing exam.
Good to hear.
Are there, and examination officers and invigilators, we are all alert.
Great to hear, as you would expect of my alma mater, the University of Ghana. Thank you very much, Doc, for joining the conversation. Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, political scientist, lecturer, and of course, head of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. A number of messages I cannot read, but this one, Hudu Abubakar Sadiq says, good morning, Ben. Watching you from Idras Seche Dumase. Will Dr. Addison and his deputy stepping down help us ease our current situation? That's a question. Some of the others are too lengthy for me to look at. But right as we cap it off, this segment, as always, brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. What are they offering you if you're a man, prostate screening? If you're a woman, fertility screening. Gratis, for free. You won't pay anything. All you have to do, reach out to them at any of their branches here in Accra, Spintex opposite the Shell signboard, Kumasi, Krodomabwe here behind the Angel Educational Complex, Takrade Anaji State Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanso and Siama and Zama. You can reach them on 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease, but just the start of sports. All the action coming your way, courtesy the sports crew and Muftau Nabila Abdullahi. Do stay.
Muftau Nabila Abdullah here with sports on the AM show. And next month, specifically on Thursday, September 9, Ghana will be hosting Central African Republic in the last African Cup of Nations qualifier. And that game will be staged at the Baba Yara Sports Stadium. The Ashanti Regional Director of the National Sports Authority, Emmanuel Kojo-Appiah, says that his outfit is doing everything within their power to ensure that the facility is up to the standard required by FIFA and CAF to host international matches.
Just as we've been saying, we have a pitch maintenance manual, which the consultant is always in touch with us, discussing issues and how to, especially when we have a number of activities on it and we have to recover it. And that is exactly what we've started. On few interviews that I was granted, we explained that we've already started works on the pitch, and this morning the first stage was to mow the pitch to the root level. We are not done yet. Tomorrow we are going to continue again. We will cut it down again. From there are a series of regime that we will take the pitch through. We do lots of things, mowing, rolling of, yes, fertilization, and then we apply, we water it enough, and then there are other stuff that we will do. And luckily enough, we don't have any serious activity on the pitch. And within the next 3 weeks, we are sure of having a green and a level played pitch ready for the Black Stars match.
A level playing pitch ready for the Black Stars match against Central African Republic. Ghana needs a draw and a win. A draw is enough to secure qualification to the competition, which will be staged in Côte d'Ivoire next year. But let's come home and talk club football. And a board member of Accra House of Oak, Dr. Nyahunyo Tamaklo, says his decision to stay as a board member of the club is to ensure that the current leadership of the Phobia family puts the right structures in place that will ensure success within the shortest possible time. According to him, if any leader of the club is not doing the right things, he is there to ensure that the person is brought back on track to ensure that House of Oak is able to win trophies for the club.
Where you have a leader who has a vision and he knows what to do for a club, you follow him. And if the person is not pulling his weight, I personally would just desert. At my age, I'm still a member of the board, and I attend meetings because I want to make sure that this club succeeds. So when it comes to longevity, we have it in our family. If you pray that I die, you are telling like that. I'm glad to see all of you. Last time I had the opportunity to meet the leadership of the support group in my residence, and I had a long chat with them. This is a club. There are various strategies. If you have anything worrying you, approach the group in which you are, and they will know which you are, and they will know how to pass on it.
Still on club football and Swedro All Blacks, their Dutch coach, Rene Costa, has arrived in the country to study the affairs of the technical department of the club. He says his vision is to ensure that they qualify to participate in the Ghana Premier League. There's more in this report by my colleague, Lawrence Baidu.
Costa was appointed earlier this month as part of the reshuffle in Swedro All Blacks technical team for the upcoming season. The appointment of the UEFA A license holder is a strategic move that is aimed at enhancing the team's performance, optimizing player development, and propelling them towards a possible league triumph in the upcoming season as they chase promotion to the Ghana Premier League. Speaking on his arrival at the Kotoka International Airport, the Dutch trainer talked about his main targets as he takes over the club as the technical director.
My main goal is to develop the football program of Swedro All Black, to increase the level of players and coaches, and to find new top players, and also to help the team to promote to the Premier League. It's also a dream of the president.
The former Almere City trainer also explained his decision to join the Division 1 league side ahead of other high-profile teams in Ghana.
A couple months ago I was here on invitation by NDC Nijmegen. They asked me to come and see a tournament in Kumasi. It was organized by the president of Swedro All Black. I was impressed by the vision, impressed about the organization. I was impressed about how they look, how they see football. And what I like is to work with young, talented players. It's not only about here to perform, but also to find players who have the ability to play later in Europe. So that combination for me is a good one.
Costa will oversee all aspects of the club's technical operations, including the development and implementation of training programs, selection of coaching staff, scouting and recruitment of players, as well as strategic planning to optimize team performance.
My colleague Lawrence Baidu with that report. And now Let's do some athletics. In the just ended World University Games, which took place in China, Ghana's Rosie Abua did a jump of 1.94 meters to become the national record holder of high jump. And now he's looking forward to making Ghana proud in the upcoming World Athletics Championship to be staged in Budapest. The team arrived in Ghana on a Tuesday, and she says that it is rare for a local athlete to secure qualification to participate in the highest level or on the highest level of world athletics.
I feel so happy and overwhelmed for the impressive performance I put up during the competition. Even though it wasn't easy, but I put up my best. Actually, I'm much impressed to be one of the athletes going for that World Athletics Championship, because it's not anybody who has gotten this opportunity. So if I have gotten this opportunity, I have to use it well. So I'm very much impressed to be part of that team as well. Next year, I'm hoping I'll train very well and put up a best height, which will go further beyond what the height I've put in this competition. Actually, if the opportunity comes for me to go, I will go and continue my training there, because in Ghana there is lack of facilities, but outside there are more facilities and better facilities which will help enhance my performance, which will help me qualify or do a better height more than what I've done.
She broke the national record, which was initially held by Abigail Kwartin. Abigail Kwartin did a jump of 1.92 meters, and Rose has now jumped 1.94 meters. So what it means is that she's Ghana's record holder when it comes to high jump. Let's do some fun games. And old boys of Infantsman Senior High School, they came together to organize fun games as they seek to bring old students of the school under one umbrella to strengthen their bond. My colleague Lawrence Bedu has the rest of the story.
The occasion serves as an avenue for the old students of Infantsipim and Adisadel College to raise funds for the development of the two schools. The Infantsipim Adisadel Fun Day Games returned for the 16th edition this year after a 5-year break. The theme for this year's program is Beyond the Rivalry, Uniting True Sports. Objectives will be to continue fostering healthy competition and promoting sportsmanship, renewing, building friendships, and creating networking opportunities, as well as strengthening the bond between the two schools. Speaking at the launch of this year's event, Kojo Morgan, a co-chairman of the planning committee and an old student of Infantsipim, explained the idea behind the event.
Happening in this country, a lot of stress. Okay, so there's an opportunity for you to move to the Ghana Armed Forces Sports Complex, Bremer Camp. Come and distress there. Okay, whilst having fun at the same time. You playing. There'll be board games, table tennis, swimming, soccer, basketball, the atmosphere, and there will be some brass band music to dance to. Okay, so you should be, when you come there, you should expect to have some fun, distress, and so that you get, at the same time, we should also look at the fact that we are doing this because we want to raise enough funds to support our schools.
Seth Jojome, who is also a co-chairman and an old student of Adisco, also called on corporate organizations to add their support to the games.
The launch idea is to court corporate Ghana to get involved with helping to run the cost into the build-up of the games. There's a lot of expense into it, but we believe that as they sponsor, they get a mileage out of the kind of caliber of people they are going to be meeting. Infantsipim Adisadel has a host of people who are running businesses everywhere. So as you as a business entity get a space to advertise and to contribute, sponsor a program within the games, you have a mileage there, you have a leverage out there, and people will know your business, and I can tell you that it's untold kind of route for you to build your business.
This year's event is slated for September 9 at the Ghana Armed Forces Sports Complex in Bema Camp. Activities on the day will include tennis, football, basketball, golf, board games, Jama session, and health screening. A football match between the current school teams of both Infantipim and Adisadel will climax the event.
All present here duly declare the Santa Mobile Games of 2023 duly launched. Duly launched for all of us.
Following the adjournment of Parliament, the minority are taking its war against the central bank governor a notch higher. Speaking at a news conference, Minority Leader Dr. Kiso Atoforsen announced that if the Bank of Ghana governor and his deputies did not resign in 21 days, they will be mobilizing to occupy the central bank.
We in the NDC call for the resignation, immediate resignation of the governor of the central bank and his deputies within 21 days from today. We are resolved to embark on popular action to occupy the central bank and drive out the team of inept, callous, and criminally minded mismanagers of our finances to save the Bank of Ghana. We call on all of you that if the governor fails to act by resigning, you join us to march to occupy the Bank of Ghana in 21 days' time, to force him out and to force his deputies out.
The minority details the key reasons.
The report revealed the following astonishing facts. 1. The Bank of Ghana recorded a staggering loss of 60.8 billion Ghana cedis, which is equivalent of $6 billion US. This is twice the amount we are to receive from the recent IMF bailout. The NPP government chose the easy, reckless, lazy, and criminal path of printing money. Dr. Ernest Addison, who is now known as the printer of money, has conspired with members of economic mismanagement team, led by Alhaji Dr. Bawumia and the inept Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, aka One Program, One Bond, to destroy Ghana's central bank.
Atoforsen alleged that the central bank is aiding key government officials to illegally pack money to buy votes in 2024.
It is now obvious that many more members of the Akufo-Addo, Dr. Bawumia government will likely be keeping several more millions of dollars in their bedrooms and building a war chest to illegally buy electoral votes at both party primaries and the upcoming general elections. Maybe it's not only Madam Cecilia Dapa who has kept some money in her bedrooms.
They also have a response for the central bank blaming the debt exchange program for the losses. So what will the NDC MPs do if the Bank of Ghana governor decide to still stay at post? Minority Chief Whip Gavins Kwame Agboja has some answers.
What will we do after the 21 days? They shouldn't try us. We have options, like we always say. Our options are in our head. They should not try it because we are capable of deploying options that will get him out of office by force if he refuses to go within the 21 days.
The ball is now in the court of Central Bank Governor Ernest Addison and his deputies, who have been given 21 days to pack bag and baggage and head out. Kweku Asante for Joy News, Accra.
So that is the tale of the tape, the minority in Parliament saying that they're basically going to take over the central bank after that 21-day ultimatum. Welcome to the big story. So as we get into that, we'll be announcing the guests who will be joining us on this beat shortly. But let's take a look at some of what is being indicated right here. So if you look at the Bank of Ghana losses and the NDC's claims over here, you would see the Bank of Ghana supposedly recording a staggering loss of 60.8 billion, not supposedly. which is equivalent to $6 billion, twice as much as we're hoping to get from the IMF. Now, the Bank of Ghana recorded a negative equity of over 55.1 billion Ghana cedis, and then it wrote off 48.4 billion, about half of the government's indebtedness to the central bank, without parliamentary approval. Now, if we move on to take a further look at some other developments when it comes to what the minority is talking about, they also hint at the fact that the Bank of Ghana spent some 131.6 million Ghana cedis on motor vehicle maintenance and running in 2022 alone. Motor vehicle maintenance and running, 131.6 million, a 114% increment over the previous year's expenditure. 114% increment. There's also foreign and domestic travels of the bank. There's more coming. So the Bank of Ghana costing the Ghanaian taxpayer a staggering 97.4 million Ghana cedis, which is about 246% increment over the previous year. So you look at the first item, motor vehicle maintenance and running, 114% upwards, north. If you look at foreign and domestic travel, again, 97.4 million, and that has also gone up by 246%. Then, the Bank of Ghana is also accused of dissipating another 8.6 million Ghana cedis on directors' remuneration alone. The directors' remuneration. This represents about 87% of an increment over the previous year's expenditure. And the question is, how can all of this be explained? Then again, with other costs, the Bank of Ghana spent a colossal 357.9 million Ghana cedis on banking supervision expenses. Then, in terms of other undisclosed expenses, that amounted to 287.8 million Ghana cedis of the taxpayers' money. And it decided to invest $250 million, not cedis, dollars. That is the equivalent of 2.8 billion Ghana cedis on another head office building somewhere at Ridge. Head office building, 2.8 billion Ghana cedis, or the equivalent of $250 million. Question, is all of this justified? On the back of all of that, we also have to look at this staggering figure right here. 60.8 billion Ghana cedis incurred as a significant loss in 2022 on the back of the DDEP. But let's finally look at a bit of a breakdown of some of these items. So, if you look at the Bank of Ghana's losses for last year, the composition, non-marketable instruments, that's the figure you get, 32.3 billion. Then there are marketable instruments, 16.1 billion Ghana cedis. Cocobot, 4.7 billion. Price and exchange rate valuation, 5.2 billion. And interest expenses on cost of monetary policy, 3.3 billion. Actually, if you do the math, you'll get over 60 billion on that. But these are the core compositions and the breakdown from there. So we're going to be engaging shortly our guests, Dr. Patrick Esuming. He's an economist at the University of Ghana Business School. We also have Professor Lord Mensah, an associate professor of finance at the University of Ghana Business School, and Dr. Stephen Amwa, who joins the conversation with us. He is Deputy Trade Minister. All of these gentlemen join the conversation. A very good morning to you, gentlemen.
Good morning, Ben.
Good
morning to my fellow panelists.
Okay, so that is Dr. Esuming I hear there, right?
Correct.
Okay. Dr. Esuming, so let me start with you. Look at this breakdown. Look at the dynamics, the costs, the expenses, the payments to directors, the cost of flights or travel, among others. And the shoot-ups, 200+%, 80+%, over 100% in different dynamics year on year. Even before we get to the breakdown, what is the tail of the tape? What is your reading? What do you see?
Good morning again, and good morning to viewers. So, I think, 60 billion losses is a huge number. And on the surface of it, that looks quite problematic. I think when you look at the breakdown of the individual lines you read, including the directors' compensation and other costs and fuel and running, maintenance and running. I think for those ones, we should probably leave the Bank of Ghana to provide some additional clarification about, why there was those substantial increment. I think if you look over the last 12 months, especially if you compare 2022 and 2021, we know that the significant increment in almost the price of almost everything. You see what the inflation was. And in particular, we know fuel costs went up. But I guess that the Bank of Ghana is in a better position to come and explain why those pretty astronomical increases. But if you look at those cost breakdowns and compare them with the overall 60 billion figure, look, when you add all of those items up, the items that are enumerated, they are not even up to 1 billion. So I think we have to understand that as much as those increments are substantial, they are not the reason for the 60 billion loss that we've seen. So I think that is how I read those numbers.
I do not think in any quarters the suggestion is that that is essentially what led to the 60.8 billion Ghana cedi loss, because we know the impact of the DDEP, and that taken out would have left the Bank of Ghana with a loss of less than 10 billion. But I guess it's all about accountability, and even in the midst of what we've said time and again, COVID-19, the Russo-Ukrainian war, and the economic crunch, we would have wanted to be more accountable, more responsible in our spending, right?
Yes, correct. The optics don't look good, but I think a different way of looking at it is that what you presented is the increment between 2021 and 2022. It would be good to see from 2020 to 2021, what was the increment? If that has been the historical level of increment, then, I guess, we will probably live with that. But on the face of it, increasing expenditure lines over 200%, over 100%, they don't look good. So I think it's important for the Bank of Ghana for those specific lines to come and explain why those things are there and why we've seen those substantial increments.
So let's just take a look at them, and then you can share your thoughts before I move on to some of the other guests. So on motor vehicle maintenance and running in 2022 alone, the figure that was mentioned, if you look at it comparatively year on year, that's a 114% increment. 114%. You look at foreign and domestic travel of the Bank of Ghana, it costs the taxpayer 97.4 million. That is a 246% increment. 246, almost 250. You look at the 8.6 million on the director's remuneration alone. This was at a time when the economy was struggling, when we were courting the IMF, when we were wailing about COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine. At that time, there was an increment in terms of director's remuneration of about 87%. Look at the figures. When comparatively you look at all of this, put side by side with the fact that the Bank of Ghana is looking to invest $250 million. Look at that vis-a-vis what we're getting from the IMF. $250 million in another head office building at Ridge. How does that add up for you?
Well, okay, so let's look at the details. I think if you take the directors and remuneration, I think they have to come and explain whether it is the same number of directors, because this look like is the total remuneration. So if it's the same number of directors and their average pay has gone up that much, then that is quite problematic given the circumstances that we are in. So I haven't read the details of that aspect of the report to know whether they've increased the number of directors, and that's what was explained. If you look at all of this, if you put all of this together, the optics don't look good. On the surface, it doesn't look good, and it doesn't seem to be in tune with the economic circumstances that the country witnessed in 2022. So I guess it's a legitimate question to ask, and I think anybody can ask the Bank of Ghana to explain why those expenses have gone up that much. I think I hesitate to, so first of all, it doesn't look good. I hesitate to impugn any motives until there's some detailed explanation about why these increments have come about.
And that is what all of us are looking for as well, some sort of explanation in respect of how these increments came to bear. But let me find out whether we have our other guests on board, Professor Lord Mensah, together with the others, so that we can get their take. Do we have Professor Mensah on board?
Yes, you have me.
Okay, Prof. A very good morning to you. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Yes, good morning and good morning to our viewers.
Tell me, for you, having listened, I don't know whether you followed from the start when I gave a breakdown or whether you want me to do it again, but from banking supervision expenses to other undisclosed expenses to the head office building pegged at $250 million, that's about 2.8 billion Ghana cedis, to other expenses that have shot up by about 247%, 87%, 100+%. What is your initial reading of this case that the minority has raised forcefully in Parliament?
Yeah, I think if you look at the happenings on the ground and the structures of our financial system, I have always been calling for, the head of the Bank of Ghana governor, to some extent, looking at even the board, because they seem to be too opaque. Now, before I make my point, have you seen Bank of Ghana making an advert for recruitment before? Let's ask ourselves, all these years that, we jumped into the space of employment, have we seen Bank of Ghana, making an advert, or is there any act that prevent them from placing a public advert to look for experts to help them run, the show? Now, let's put that aside. All this is to tell you that the Bank of Ghana is too opaque in their dealings. And from where I sit, publishing, your balance sheet, and then looking at these numbers coming up, it tells you so many things. There are so many attributes to those increments. Either they are abusing their operational, autonomy that they have. For governance autonomy, we know very well that they don't have it because, the Bank of Ghana being appointed by the president and the president having representatives on the board and all those, I know for governance autonomy, they will not have it. But for operational autonomy, which was the last straw that we're holding on, it has been abused, especially in Dr. Addison's, Bank of Ghana. Let me put it that way. Because, clearly, if a Bank of Ghana would print money and finance, a budget deficit, it's a way of meddling with the fiscal, aspects of the economy. But under normal circumstance, I'm not saying that central banks are not supposed to come to a rescue when economies are not doing well. I've heard several reasons why we find ourselves in trouble, why the Bank of Ghana had to print money because they had to rescue the economy. I understand. But if a central bank wants to rescue an economy, they don't channel the money through the government circles. There is a logical reason why, the central bank can only finance the government's expected revenue in a particular fiscal year up to only 5%. And there's a reason for that. The reason being that the central bank, per the act, is supposed to wire money into the economy through the monetary channel, not the fiscal channel. The monetary channel to the banks. Let me give you this scenario. We had a situation where banks had their investment restructured, as a result of investing in government bonds. That frees, one way or the other, the liquidity performance of the banks. So if a central bank wants to get money into the economy, which channel will be the best? The best channel will be to wire it through the banks, in the process of lending to the banks at a particular rate. and then the banks will take the money, having learned a lesson that if they invest in government instrument, there will be a problem, or possibly they are not that safe. The banks would have taken that money and start looking into the economy, which sectors of the economy are doing well, and then lend to those sectors. We'll still rebuild the economy back. But wiring it and giving it to the fiscal side, looking at the financing expenditures of the government in a way, all those monies are monies that are likely about 60% of that will go into social policies. You are not making sense as a bank. So from where I sit, they've messed up big time, in a sense that the channel of operations that they're supposed to stand for, they didn't use those channels to rescue the economy. And as a result of that, it was more or less like a money being sunk down into the drain. If you look at the Bank of Ghana's operations very well, every single money that they pump into the economy, in the long run, it is expected that they will use their own monetary policies to mop up those monies, at least get about 60% of those monies into the folds of the Bank of Ghana. But from the way those monies were distributed, I don't think even if government wants to mop up, if they want to use monetary policy to mop up, they will get, that kind of effect. And so you will see monetary policy being increased here and there, and inflation is still hanging in the air. So from where I sit, I think they moved away from their core mandate, which is to ensure that they come into a rescue of the economy through the monetary channel instead of the fiscal channel. So that's the mistake they made, and I think it has to do with the relationship the governors have with the government, and it's a build-up of the governance, autonomy compromise that we have in the system. Because if a governor is appointed by the president, and the president wants certain lines of policies, it will be tempting, to coerce, this governor to send money into sectors that not necessarily wire the money through the Ministry of Finance, and the monies will end up in sectors that are unproductive, in a way to rescue the economy. So from where I sit, it has to do with that fine thin line between, the presidency and then the governors of Bank of Ghana. Now, if you take this into consideration, you'll come to realize that every economy that is running down, if you take 2008, America re-energized the economy through the Fed system. The Fed had to, make sure that they energize the system by lending to the banks, lending to financial institutions that are touching on certain, sectors of the economy, just to rebuild up the economy. But they didn't give the money to government. They didn't give the money to any ministry to go on to say that we are coming to, solve economic problems. So from where I sit, it has to do with an abuse of autonomy, operational autonomy of the central bank. They seem to be too opaque and so isolated. You don't even know what exactly is going on in that black box. And I know that they look at the numbers that are coming up. That is how I'm reading into the numbers, because of, the way and manner, they operate. And if you don't respect laws, right? You don't respect act that governs your economic activity, you mess up the economy, because law, finance, and economics go together. If you refuse to respect the laws, you will never get your economy on right track. And that is exactly what is happening, to this country. If you play into the space, you'll come to understand that some of these things happening, I can say, I'm tempted to say that they were preempted. Because, during the COVID, the finance minister went to Parliament to ask for a step aside of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Have we asked ourselves whether that act has been brought back? It hasn't been brought back. And so the finance minister has a leeway to borrow, up to whichever threshold that they want from the Bank of Ghana. But then there's a Bank of Ghana Act which also restricts the Bank of Ghana as to what threshold they're supposed to, lend to the government, and then also possibly how they
not
can
more than
re-energize
5%
economy.
of the previous year's revenue.
Exactly, 5% of previous year's revenue. In some cases, 5% of the expected revenue of that particular fiscal year. So from what I said, it has to do with not keeping to the rules. And for me, if you don't want to keep to the rules and you do otherwise, I think your heads must be called on.
Before I bring in Dr. Stephen Amwa, who is Deputy Trades Minister for Trade and Industry, does it surprise you that while we were hankering after an IMF supported program, all of this was still happening? Does it surprise you any when our economy was literally on the ropes?
It doesn't surprise me because of the opaque nature of their operations. Bank of Ghana, you ask yourself so many questions. I placed a question earlier on as to the way and manner they recruit. We need to question that. I'm not saying they don't have the expert there. They have serious experts, have very good friends there. But then I can tell you that, most of the time they are too closed. And as a central bank, you cannot look so inwards in that manner. So I'm not surprised that these things are coming out so easily.
Right. Dr. Stephen Amwa, a very good morning to you, sir. Do we have Dr. Stephen Amwa? Okay. We will get him back on the connection. But Dr. Patrick Esuming, so if you look at the different dynamics, now you would hear the minority raising concerns, accusing the governor of incompetence. That's where it's got to now. Accusing the governor of incompetence. In fact, the minority leader, Dr. Cassiel Atuforsen, claimed that the governor had recklessly mismanaged the central bank, bringing it to its knees, and that he couldn't continue to lead the bank without being held accountable. Is that a stance you concur with, that you are in agreement with?
Well, first of all, we have to understand what is the core mandate of the central bank. Because I think a lot of this discussion has come up because of the hopping 60 billion plus loss. But when you look at its mandate, it is price stability through the monetary policy, and then also ensuring stability of the banking system, and then also issuing notes and currencies, and then also ensuring that the cedi is stable against other currencies. Now, so the first thing I want to say is that we cannot demand their resignation because of the loss, because the Bank of Ghana is a regulator. It's not a state-owned enterprise that we evaluate them on the basis of whether they are making profits or they are making loss. So I think that's the first thing I want to say. If there are other reasons that we want to demand their resignation, we should discuss that one, not because it made a loss. It doesn't mean that the Bank of Ghana should be making huge losses. When you look at it over the period, I think this 2022 was an anomaly in terms of the level and the losses that they've made. Historically, they've been making some profits. The second thing is that if you look at the actions that they took, were those actions geared towards achieving any of their mandates? So let's start with the domestic debt exchange and the haircut that they have received. The question is, if the Bank of Ghana doesn't absorb those losses, that the haircut they receive from the domestic debt exchange, where would those losses go? You could easily see that then it means that the banks would have had to take more losses, or individual bondholders would have had to take more losses. So as a regulator, seeing potentially what such level of losses will do to the banking system and its stability, you can excuse them for absorbing those losses. I think so on that count, I wouldn't fault them too much. The area where I think there's a legitimate case for criticizing the central bank is the printing of money for the government. That is the overdraft that they extended to the government. I think that place, there's a legitimate reason, there's a legitimate case to criticize their performance. Because, in May 2022, the governor gave an interview to Bloomberg, I believe, where he said that the inflation rate that we were seeing at that time was primarily due to supply side constraints. And yet, over that period, we saw the central bank persistently raise the policy rate. Now, admittedly, you may raise the policy rate to stabilize the currency on the exchange rate and other things. But you see, you cannot be printing money for the government to spend and turn around to raise the policy rate to try and mop up the excess liquidity. I think that side is problematic. That particular course of action was problematic. And on that score, you can legitimately criticize the central bank. Again, you have to look at what else would have happened. Because I've heard the head of research speak at a public event at the University of Ghana, where he said that the government was on its knees and that without the central bank stepping in, who knows what will have happened to the governance system. So I think, it's a legitimate criticism, but we also have to look at it on the overall balance. Mind you, the monetary policy doesn't sit independent of the fiscal. They are supposed to work hand in hand. The problem is that, there's been so much problem with the fiscal side, and the governor and his deputies, in their view, found it necessary to absorb some of the problems coming from the fiscal side. So for me, we should trace the root of all of this to why the government, the fiscal side, the finance ministry, couldn't manage our debt to the extent that, we needed to do this domestic debt exchange, and to the extent that the Bank of Ghana felt it necessary. Well, I think they should accept the criticism on the face, but whether it means that, we should be calling for their resignation, I don't know. I worry that, this has become very politicized. I think that's where my concern is.
And that is exactly where I want us to diverge. I don't want us to focus on the politics, because you would expect an opposition to paint certain dynamics. But that is why I couched it in the context of what has been done by the central bank vis-a-vis year-on-year developments, expectations, especially when your economy is on the ropes. Is that what you would have expected? That's the angle I'm taking it from. And of course, there should be some level of accountability, right? And in this instance, unlike in other jurisdictions where people would willingly resign, if in this instance you don't have it, then what happens? That's where we are taking the conversation from, Dr. Isuming.
Yeah, I know. I think it's absolutely a legitimate way. I want us to discuss what reforms are needed to ensure that going forward, the Bank of Ghana is stronger and, staying a lot more within its constitutional mandate. Because simply saying the governor will resign. If the governor resigns and the core of the problems that prevent the central bank from, in some ways, asserting its independence are not resolved, then we haven't really solved any problem. So I think it's a legitimate angle to look at it. I personally don't think that this merits, the resignation of the governor and the deputies. I think that, on some level, a little bit more transparency would have helped. Because in the middle of last year, when questions were being raised about the level of printing or the money printing that the central bank was giving to the government, the Bank of Ghana seemed to issue statements to sort of debunk it. And as it turned out, they will admit that they printed money for the government to spend. So I think that is where the transparency comes in, where, the transparency and at the same time accountability. So in some sense, you can say people, the call is a call for accountability. I just worry that if you all believe that the central bank should be independent, then you don't want a quote unquote a militant parliament also trying to impugn on the ability of the central bank to function. Obviously, it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be held accountable. I think if there had been a call for the central bank to come up and come and explain or come and account to the representatives of the people and answer questions on why certain things have been done, I will support that. Not necessarily that. And then, so when we learn that, when you have an understanding of what these problems are, how these problems have occurred, and we embark on the angle of making a little bit more reforms to improve how they are functioning, I think that will serve the longer interest than simply calling for their resignation.
I do not know whether we do have Dr. Amwa with us, do we? All right. Let me bring in Professor Mensah back. Are you in agreement with Dr. Assuming that letting heads roll, the head of the central bank, the governor, and his deputies may be, for lack of a better word, it may not be the most apt decision to make at this point in time? Or do you think, on the back of what we're discussing this morning, they have gone over and beyond the room given to them in terms of maybe any excesses, for which reason it would be justified to contemplate their resignation?
Yeah, so I think where Patrick is coming from, I do side with him on one side. On the other side, I don't. You see, there are laws and there are, rules governing every institution as far as, democratic dispensation is concerned. But the persons behind the laws, before then, let's try and then, so Patrick has proposed that we should try and understand what, has gone on for all these numbers to come up. Now, can we go back in years? We have finance ministers who are, still alive and they are kicking. We have Dr. Kwame Pipra, we have Setekwe, we have, you can name them, Isaku, and all those former, governors. Let's try to establish the historical relationship, whether at the point in time there was an attempt to coerce, the central bank to, finance maybe one or two policies of the government through the finance ministry or not. And I think it will come out clear that with the current administration, the relationship has been so fluid to the extent that, when a request comes, it will be difficult to place them. To some extent, if you go into details and you question some of the finance ministers, they will tell you they barely get to know what exactly is happening at the Bank of Ghana. And Bank of Ghana was supposed to put the government in toes with the expertise they have. I made a statement that when monies are wired through the banking sector, it is clear that the banking sector has the expertise to allocate monies efficiently. So whatever money, that's what the rule says. That whatever money, the Bank of Ghana thinks, they can pump into the economy to rescue the situation, it should have gone through the corridors.
Okay. Hold for me, Professor Mensah, just briefly. I want to give a bite to Dr. Stephen Amwa. He's Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry. Doc, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining the conversation. We thought we had you earlier and we lost you. But on the back of this call by the minority, taking out the sort of conversation we're having this morning takes out the politics. Forget about NDC and MPP. Let's look at what has happened in the DDEP and the different dynamics involving the central bank. A loss of 60.8 billion, less than 10 billion of which would have been the actual loss of the central bank, barring the DDEP. Then we have the Bank of Ghana recording a negative equity of over 55.1 billion, then writing off 48.4 billion Ghana cedis, about half of the Ghana government's indebtedness to the central bank. But there's more. You can talk about the 97.4 million spent on foreign and domestic travel. So I'm talking internal dynamics now. Then you can talk about the 357.9 million spent on banking supervision and the 287.8 million on other expenses. Then you look at the fact that there's also the call in terms of Act 612 and Act 918, requiring the governor to notify Parliament, which you'll remember, to when it's making advances to government exceeding 5% of the previous fiscal year's total revenue. You are already abreast of all of them. I don't need to walk through all of them. What do you make of what is happening vis-a-vis the work of the central bank when it comes to regulation of the commercial banks, price stabilization, among others?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you've spoken at length, so you allow me to also explain things.
Doc, your line is not so clear.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, you go ahead, Doc.
Hello?
Yes, it's clear. It's clearer now. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. The point I'm making is that you allow me to explain the things you really very well. I beg you, so that you be fair to me. In the first place, I greet my boss, Professor Lord Mensa, right? Is he the one there?
Yes, please. Together with Dr.
Yes.
Isuming.
Yes, and I agree, Dr. Isuming as well. I mean, Lord is my boss, KNUST. So respectfully, that's why I heard he was the last person that spoke. But I agree the two of them in a very respectful manner. I think anybody raising concern about what is being put into the public domain, in my candid opinion, it's not probably to be blamed largely, because once any piece of information is thrown out there, that is actually giving a picture like somebody is embezzling money, somebody has mismanaged, especially these times that the whole world is in quite of economic turmoil. People will get worried. But let's be very honest. I have a problem because I'm a politician, and I have a problem because I need to also exercise my professional ethics as somebody who has some sort of knowledge in this area. In the first place, the concerns they are raising, take the exposure of Bank of Ghana, that's how we take it. They've come out to explain. And anybody that really understands those things technically will have to, unless you go deeper and further, to come out with your own materiality and other pieces of information that will let Bank of Ghana's explanation for the exposure or the negative equity to be false. Because Bank of Ghana core mandate, let's be honest, I mean core, or generally the outlier situation like such does not even make profit. So it doesn't mean that the negative equity they are talking about is an issue that Bank of Ghana has collapsed or whatever it is. And two, there are precedents in other countries. When it comes to relationship between central banks and reserve banks and even the authorities, go and check. Bank of Ghana provided this. I haven't read all, but they illustrated that of UK, Australia, and other giant economies. So let us know. And they come to explain the fact that the marketable instruments, non-marketable instruments, and then cocoa board exposure. We know cocoa board exposure came as a result of two issues. One, the fact that there was a pricing policy or a price implementation that did not go down well with us as a country against the world price, which made us lose a lot. It's a fact too. Because of the fact that they normally deal with, they take money, they get money, they pay back, and then the interest rate issue that came up affected them badly. That moved interest rate to over almost 200%, which is a fact. Let's all go and check. In fact, base rate in UK, I'm not comparing Ghana to UK, but I'm telling you that it is a developed economy that they have even better structured economy. Post-COVID base rate has been increased to, I think, about 1,800% or even over, from about 0.25 to about 4.75 to 5% thereabout. So these are honest analysis we should all make in this context. That doesn't mean that as a country we should sit there. So talking about the fact that we do things, we need to put them in a context. Then it comes to this issue about PFM Act. I'm not a lawyer, but at least I'm on the finance committee, and I'm a finance person, so I have pretty much idea about Public Financial Management Act, not everything. The same Public Financial Management Act, PFM Act, 2016, Act 921, Section 18, state three conditions under which our fiscal policies and rules, upon consultation, should be suspended. What are our fiscal rules and policies? They come to the controls and the legal system. The things that require legally or by policy or convention or rule before ABCD can be expended or programmed, ABCD can be conducted. It's a fact. One of them is war. Second one is natural disaster. Third one is, I think, health epidemic or pandemic. I don't have it here, but you can go and read. But it's boiled down to, issues of health that have national, whatever, or global. And this is a fact. So you cannot compare peacetime to war times in terms of controls. If your child has convulsion, respectfully, and sorry to those parents who have ever whose case I've ever had that. The time that a child has to be taken to the hospital, I don't think it is a time that you need to see, even if the policy of the family is that take your child to Komfanochi or Kolebu, go and see a church elder first or your family. No, you don't do that. You take resuscitation measures. So let us analyze these things in a certain context and advise appropriately. Now talking about Bank of Ghana spending ABCD, I think that one, I can't say anything good or bad because those who are talking about it, I haven't seen the documents whether Bank of Ghana, they flouted their rules in terms of their mandate to spend X amount of money, whether they did not do this or whatever. We need to get all these things.
Okay, so can
honestly speaking,
I don't want to
Bank of
interrupt.
Ghana even came out to say that all these issues are not just even today, in terms of even their financial issues.
Right.
It's an accumulated thing that has been going on for so many years. What I want to say lastly is that I want our brothers and sisters who mean well for this country to ask for Bank of Ghana in terms of all the spending items or parameters from 20 years up to now and do trend analysis and ask for explanations whether they have been spending more. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but don't let us make it as if it is just now. And Bank of Ghana is, moving away from their actual or core mandate and their conventional practices. That is where I have the problem with that.
Okay.
And for me, my brothers NDC, what the MPP would have done say, which I think we need to advise the two parties, that enough of enough. The last thing we said is success as success. Enough is enough of what NDC MPP will do when one is in government. We should have a new paradigm shift that can let us accept common practices and the reality when it comes to policies and some of these issues. This is all that I can say.
All right. Just to break down, though, you've spoken about debts that may have accumulated or costs or things that may have happened in the past. But we know that some of the figures from the Bank of Ghana, the central bank's own information report, year on year paint a certain dynamic. So let me just walk you through some of the figures. But before then, computer-related expenses, according to the Bank of Ghana, it cost a whopping 67.9 million Ghana cedis in 2022 alone. Computer-related expenses, so maybe repair, purchases, and all of that. Then you look at communication expenses. Communication. It cost 32 million Ghana cedis. So you add the 67 to 32, you're already getting around 100 million Ghana cedis. And then we're also looking at that dynamic of the Bank of Ghana seeking to put up a $250 million head office in the rich area. That's the equivalent of about 2.8 billion Ghana cedis in these times. But the breakdown I was referencing a bit earlier, if you look at its spending, so I'm talking internal, I'm even moving away from the DDEP and everything related. Internal dynamics, 131.6 million spent on motor vehicle maintenance and running in 2022 alone. It is a 114% increment over the previous year. So that is 2021 to 2022. That's the difference, 114%. You look at foreign and domestic travel of the Bank of Ghana, it costs 97.4 million. What's the difference? That is a 246% increment over 2021. You look at the sum spent on directors' remuneration, directors at the Bank of Ghana and their remuneration, 8.6 million Ghana cedis. What is the difference? An extra 87% by way of increment. How do you see that? I mean, these are figures year on year, and we were in the midst of, seeking an IMF program and trying to tighten our belts.
Okay, thank you very much. In the first place, I need to directly engage Bank of Ghana for clarity on some of these things you are raising. But before then, wait. My brother, we have a country. We have something called asymmetric information. You and I as stakeholders, external stakeholders, cannot just pick these figures out there and give our own interpretations. Because apart from you listening the narratives, we call something activity-based budget. I think Bank of Ghana should rather come clearer to explain these things very well and their justifications. And also see the same trend you are talking about between just 2 years. What have been their practices for the past 20 years. It will help us so that we know the culture they are displaying there, whether they are good or bad. Then technically, we have auditors. What is their mandate? First, preparation of Bank of Ghana's financial statements, whether they comply with the global standards like IFRS. We know that's one. Indeed, are they doing that? Two, materiality. Whether the narrative they are giving, the money they spend, is it true they spend the money on those items? Is it true? Can we have them? Can we feel that material evidence? Can we have it? Three, were they able to go through the controls, internal control systems? That is where I'm also saying that the situation in which we find ourselves in as a country, that doesn't mean Bank of Ghana cannot be corrupt. I'm not talking about that. That doesn't mean that they are justified spending what they are not. But we are all raising issues that we need to analyze in this context and get clearer and better information so that we can all make informed decisions out of these things and watch our utterances. Because situations such as where our country had to go through impaired productivity for over 20 months, where even private sector had to sack over 40,000 people, where our revenue generation has suffered about 12 billion, and that government had to, whether, rightly, wrongly, had to depend predominantly or profoundly on that financing. That because we were not having productivity, our GDP was not growing, we were borrowing, and we had that GDP escalating. A situation such as people were dying, and hurriedly we had to make a lot of, knee-jerk decisions. Some of these things, we need to go deeper and have proof of materiality. The only thing that I will have issues with is if the money spent were not being supported with any material evidence, then that one, yes. But any other thing, if I want to be very ethical with what I know and understand, which I could also be wrong, I'm not an expert, I think others are doing politics with it. Others are raising issues that they are not doing any politics with it. But of course, maybe they have not directly engaged Bank of Ghana, or maybe Bank of Ghana is doing something wrong, which is also an option or alternative. But we cannot draw inferences. If we do that, we are not being fair to Bank of Ghana. We are not being fair to the good people of this country until we get a legal backing or underpinning or otherwise, until there's clear evidence of materiality issues. I think we all have to be careful about the way we are talking about it.
Okay.
That is what I can say.
Okay, don't leave, Dr. Amwa. We're knocking off in just a few minutes. I'm going to pose some questions.
Please do that for me.
Okay, I'm just going to pose these questions, and all of you will answer, and that is how we'll wrap the conversation. Unless you have to leave immediately, at which... So maybe I'll just start with you.
I'll wait.
Okay, all right. Dr. Isuming, first off, the role of political appointments in all of this, central bank governors, and the appointments by the executive, the president. What role is it playing in all of this? Because some people feel then the governor becomes beholden to a political party, and some of what we are seeing, supposedly printing money, aiding government over and beyond what the law accepts, comes in. The NDC says, on the back of the recklessness, in quotes, of the central bank, that bank or that entity has now become a crime scene. So I want to find out from you, with the central bank's current debt overhang, can we expect Dr. Addison to navigate these choppy waters of the debt that it has, maybe even insolvency as of this point? Because they are calling for his resignation. That same question to all three of you. I'll start with you, Dr. Isuming.
Well, I think that, we should understand that the Bank of Ghana, as a regulator and its position, its debt cannot be treated like the country's overall debt or a bank's debt. Really, the law that is posted is really a paper loss. So I think we should get it clear. But the question about the appointment process, I think over time, obviously, somebody has to appoint the governor, and
must it be the president?
The framers of our exactly. So if we feel that the appointment process impugns the independence of the governor and his ability to act, then we should go and change the process. That is something I will support. If you went through a more professional route for a governor to be appointed, I think that will probably help than the current situation where the president appoints. Mind you, in the last few years, in the last few cycles, we've seen that for whatever reason, whenever there's been a change in government, either the governor has resigned or something has happened. And it also doesn't help that we've seen a few people move from being governor to become finance ministers or presidential candidates or vice president. I think all of those sort of undermines the integrity because people begin to think that, well, maybe you had party affiliations all along, even where you are at the central bank. So I think all of those are things that we have to consider. But definitely moving to an alternative arrangement where it's not necessarily the president who appoints will help. And then also a situation where every time a government changes, an institution that's supposed to be independent, we do see changes in the leadership. I think all of those don't help.
Interesting matters. And we have examples to show. Emisa Arthur and even the current vice president, and also Dr. Dufour at a point. Anyway, Professor Mensah, your take on those. Hello, Professor Mensah. Okay, it appears. Let me come to Dr. Amwa. Dr. Stephen Amwa.
I don't know. Do you mean that people are against the appointment of Bank of Ghana boss, or they think it has to be done by, I don't know, by the institution itself? I don't know. Is that what you meant?
So the point basically is political appointments, because like Dr. Esuming is mentioning, of course, we have seen some of them transition into the thick of politics, becoming vice presidents, Emisa Arthur. We also have Dr. Baumia. We've had those who have become finance ministers, like Dr. Kwabena Dufour. That also creates some thinking out there that maybe these people are political all along. And so maybe if there were some independent institution or other institutions appointing rather than the executive president, that could make a difference. That's the line of thinking.
Yeah, I think anybody that is making that suggestion, in my opinion, is not out of gear. I think it's a discussion. It's a conversation that can be provoked. And then as a country, we'll see if we can redefine new paradigm shift in the process of getting them there. But I think if you look at other jurisdictions, it's almost the same processes. Similar. They all go through appointment. There could be a few deviations or whatever. But then the point is, the institution that you say should appoint, honestly speaking, my brother, are there institutions that will not have any partisanship or political whatever? The point that we need to come out with clearly as a people or as citizens is let's all revolutionize our minds. Whether the president, whether the minister, whether the media, whether my brothers and my bosses who just spoke, who are on this platform that I've got the opportunity to speak with them, whether it's me or you sitting there. As a country, it's about our mindset. If the president or if the appointing authority has a good mindset to appoint based on meritocracy, if anybody commenting does not have any underlying parochial interest and is commenting on issues to educate the public, if Ghanaians are making decisions not out of arbitrariness because of tribalism, political, whatever, or individual interest, my brother, that is what our problem is. That is if we address that, whether it is the authority or a body, because the body that will also appoint will be a body that is not going to be voted for. So it is, I agree, yes, sometimes we need to spread the power balance, but the fact of the matter is that no matter what happens, let me end with this. I am even against the appointment of IGP. But that's my opinion. I'm against even the appointment of judicial heads. Maybe I'm not a lawyer, that is why I'm speaking this way. There are certain institutions in our country, had it been my wish, all the heads would have been probably gotten the position through a process done internally within the same organization, not appointed by any political authority. That is my wish. But whether that will help, that will give us more pros than cons, I really don't know. But the fact of the matter is that no matter what it is, all of us have to work on our mindset. Once we work on our mindset, honestly speaking, of course, we are human beings, we make mistakes, any system established by, human factor. But once we are ready to ensure the betterment of our country, whether you are just a commentator or analyst or a media man or MPP boss or NDC boss or authority, once we do that, we will clearly go for the right people. Okay. And the right people with good intention will do the right thing, and the country will benefit.
Okay.
We need to analyze and address this issue.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amoah, for joining the conversation. We wish you the best of the day, sir. Same to you, Dr. Patrick Esuming, who is with the University of Ghana Business School. We'll wrap with Professor Mensah, who now joins us again. Prof, over to you.
Yes, so I didn't get the earlier part of the question, but then
so let me just let me just frame it for you very quickly, Prof.
With the other two, I sense that you want to know whether we need a reform, right? Structural reform, or in terms of the appointment of the governor and all those. Is that what you mean?
That is part of the question. The other bit is, do you trust Dr. Addison to get us out of the choppy waters of debt and maybe insolvency that the central bank is now faced with?
Right. So with the first one, which because of my memory, I'll come to that. You know, if you have laws, right, and you don't really specify, the punitive measures, if someone should falter against the law, there's no way it will function. We can change the appointment process, we can do whatever, but then if someone should falter, right, what happens to the person? That's what we need to understand. Clearly, what has happened, if you ask me whether I do, trust Dr. Addison to still hold on to the position, I would say no, in the sense that, fine, we all understand that in times of economic difficulty, it is expected that the central bank comes in. But the process of, coming in is well spelled and clearly spelled in the Act. Use the monetary channels, right? If you use the monetary channels, done everywhere. When in 2008, the financial crisis happened, the United States, re-energized the economy through the banking corridors, through the financial institutions. That is what is expected of a bank, a central bank. So, from where I sit, if you ask me whether I should continue to hold the fort, I would say no. This boils down to what we talked about earlier. Earlier.
Quick clarity. I beg of you, Professor Mensah. Did you say if asked whether he should continue holding the fort? Are you saying the central bank's governor should go?
Yeah, I would say no. Yes, he should go. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that clarity.
Yes. Welcome.
You were making a point. I just wanted that clarity. But if you're done with your submission, then I think we can end the conversation, sir.
Yeah, so from where I sit, looking at the happenings on the ground, he didn't do well in terms of the process. And we have to be clear. Ghanaians, sometimes we use human face to shy away from the truth. It is well spelled clearly that Bank of Ghana, if you want to, pump money into the economy, use the monetary channels, not the fiscal channels. There are instances that you may come in, but that is why, in the wisdom of, the lawmakers and then what history has, put out there for the financial system, clearly you are limited in terms of the quantums of money that you give to the government. Okay. So if anybody should come out and say, what is happening to us is unique, and therefore we should seek the circumstances around the numbers and all those, before laws, they are what we call, or what we call it, reasoning. Before laws, there was reasoning.
Right.
And the reasoning behind the reason why we will not, allow the central bank to give money directly to government is as a result of maybe misallocation and all those. Use channels that can allocate funds efficiently. In essence, that will conform to the norm. Okay. So I don't think, that the gentleman, Dr. Addison, should stay on course.
Thank you, Professor Mensah, for joining the conversation. So we've had Dr. Stephen Amoah, Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry. We have also had Dr. Patrick Esuming, a lecturer at the University of Ghana, together with Professor Lord Mensah, Associate Professor of Finance at the UGBS. Dr. Amoah says, let's tread cautiously. Dr. Esuming says, there are some areas that we really ought to look at, but by and large, can we hold the central bank governor and his deputies responsible? Professor Mensah says, on the back of what we know, he should go. What is your take? This is a conversation that will continue to be out there and, of course, discussed in our studios. But do stay with us. We're going to take a break. When we return, there's more action. But let me tell you what I'm going to be doing when I take that break. I'm going to be sipping on some water, specifically Awake purified drinking water. It is treated through a strict purification process to ensure that every bottle on the market refreshes you better. Now, you're maybe thinking of size. What is the apt size for me? 330 milliliters, 500 milliliters, 750 milliliters, 1.5 liters. You're covered. They have all of those. But if you're thinking of bigger sizes, something suitable for your office or your home, they have 19-liter jar bottles that are ideal for such situations as well. All you have to do now is stay awake with Awake purified drinking water. It's another quality product of Casapreco Company Limited. Now, before I tell you about how you can purchase in bulk, for every bottle you buy, they make a donation to the National Cardiothoracic Center. And that is indeed heartwarming. If you'd like to purchase in bulk, the numbers to call 0262 351 251. Like I said, it's another quality product from Casapreco Company Limited, and this advert is FDA approved. Do stay with us. We'll be back with more on the AM Show.
Good morning to you. Thank you for staying on the AM show. I'm Bernice Abubedulansa. Now to our next big story, and we are talking about food security. It's a very important conversation we need to have because according to the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, our imports since 2019 have been hitting $2 billion and over. And import here, I'm talking about food, including fish. And this is really, really troubling. Also because when there are shocks at the international level, they definitely will have an impact on our food security here. See what happened to during the Russian-Ukraine invasion, which is still happening. We know, especially for wheat and other major food products that come from Ukraine, and the global shortage and all that. So here's what the government of Ghana has decided to do in partnership with the High Limit Group. They're embarking on food production, renewable energy and rural electrification project. And it will be happening in the northern part of the country, and it's supposed to help us achieve our goal to ensure that we produce what we eat and we eat what we produce. This morning, the Chief Executive and Project Head of High Limit Group, Emmanuel Abi, has joined me in the studio. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for making time to be here.
Yeah, it's an honor.
Right.
Yeah.
So this project falls under the One Village, One Dam initiative, right?
Exactly.
Tell us more about it.
Okay, so first of all, let me say a very good morning to your viewers, and also thank you for the opportunity to be here. In 2017, High Limit conducted an assessment on all the existing irrigation dams across the country. The assessment report indicated that most of them were not doing well, and the relative cost was high cost of electricity to run the irrigation facilities. So most of the farmers preferred actually to grow under rain-fed rather than going to grow under the irrigation scheme, because they complain that they are being charged exorbitant fees for like water user fees. So based on that assessment report, and also over the years, the evidence and statistics show that food security is a major problem in this country. And for us to be able to produce food in large quantities, sufficient quantities, and also be able to export as a country, there is the need for us to have proper irrigation dams and efficient irrigation facilities to be able to do this. And this is why High Limit found it prudent to partner with government to develop this one village, one dam policy.
Interesting. Just so we understand what is happening, this one village, one dam is the same one village, one dam project that has been embarked on by this government in previous years, right?
Okay, so I think the one village, one dam is a policy. And government has opened up the policy for the private sector to participate. And so that's why we are able to come in to partner with government to do it.
Interesting. So how does this differ from what we've already seen? Because my colleague, just about a month or two ago, Jojo Kobner, produced a documentary called Thirsty Dams, where in the area where the president cut short for the initiative, the dam there has dried out. I mean, basically non-functional. And it's a story that replicates in other parts of the country. Not to say that some of the dams were not successful, but these ones were largely not successful. How are we sure that this project we're about to embark on, which falls under this same policy, would be any different?
Okay, so I think what we're going to do now is a complement to what has been done already, but the design of this one is much, much different. And also we're spending much more money to build quality dams than what was done previously.
So where are these dams going to be located, and how will the project be executed? Over which period are we talking about here?
Okay, so overall it's going to take like 36 calendar months. That's 3 years for us to finish what we are doing. We are building 440 units across the 5 northern regions.
440 units?
440 units.
So when you say units of what?
Of the multipurpose dams.
Okay, 440?
Yes.
That's a lot.
That's a lot, yeah. So that's what we are doing, and we are doing that in 44 selected districts, and each of the selected districts will get 10 of the dams, making up the 440.
And these districts, are there no districts that already have benefited from this one village, one dam initiative? Which districts are we talking about here?
No, some have, but not all of them. I mean, when you get into the district, there are a lot of communities. Okay, so some of the communities, I think, have benefited from what has been done already, but there are still a lot more communities that need dams to be able to do all year round farming.
So when are we starting this project?
Okay, so the APC contracts have been signed with Chinese state-owned contractors. We've signed with Zhongmei Engineering Group, the same company that built the Pokuase interchange. We've signed with, they are to build 220 units. And then we've signed with Shandong High Speed Dija Group, also a Chinese state-owned contractor, to also build 220 units.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So who's financing these projects? We know government says times are hard. We're in difficult moments. There are some who have called for us to hold projects, even considering the economic situation that we find ourselves in. So financing is a very important question here. Who's financing the project?
Okay, so the financing is basically being done by High Limit and its financial partners. We are doing a 15% crowdfunding through corporate bonds from South Africa, and then the 85% from China, from Chinese development banks, with a Sinusua export buyers credit facility.
So this is something government has signed on to already?
Yes, I think we've been working with government on this since 2018.
Okay.
So, but let me say that government is not making financial commitment to the project.
Okay.
Government's role in the project is facilitation and monitoring and evaluation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, because you sound so well prepared for this. How much is it costing us per unit? Do we know?
Okay, per unit we are spending about $4 million. That is the multi-purpose. Okay.
$4 million for a dam?
Not only the dam.
Okay, tell us.
Okay, so the dam comes with its ancillaries. It's the dam plus a 180 hectare center pivot irrigation system.
Okay.
And also a power and electricity system that will help us to be able to drive the center pivot irrigation system and also be able to distribute some of the electricities to the communities in the surrounding areas.
$4 million?
Yes.
For 400 units of what you've just explained to us.
Yes.
Do we need that much? No, or $4 million for the entire project?
$4 million per unit.
Yeah, and you're doing 400 units.
We are doing 440.
So 4 million. So I'm just saying 400 times 440.
Okay.
That's what it is, right?
Yes. So that's what it's costing us if we want to build any meaningful dam, so to speak.
So I have a photo of a dam behind me. Some of the dams that we saw that others have referred to as dugouts.
Okay.
Is this what you're doing?
No, not at all.
Okay, so how different is your dam from what we're seeing here?
Okay, so ours is also a dugout. However, it's lined. We line the dams with HDP membrane, and then we also do concrete at the crest of it, so that it can store water. If you leave it like this, I mean, during rainy season you can have some water collected in the dam, but during dry season all the water will seep away into the ground. So, I mean, no, we are not doing something like this.
But so what went into determining the cost of $4 million per unit?
Okay, so we are working with engineers, and let me say world-class engineers who designed the dam, and then they came up with the bills of quantities, and that's how come we came up with the cost. Yeah.
So that's how they arrived at. So what in the whole project is making it so expensive?
Okay, so let me say it like this way so you understand. The thing is, if you build dams alone without the irrigation facilities, I mean, chances are you have people come to say, okay, let me put some pumping machine to try to pump something into my... No, that doesn't work. You need to have the irrigation system in place. And then also, if you get the irrigation systems in place and you are able to grow the crops at the harvest time, if there is no value addition means in place to be able to process the raw material into something, then you still have these crops getting rotten.
So you're combining 1V, 1D with 1D, 1F. Is that a sense I'm getting?
Exactly, and that's the way to go. Because yes, once you want to build a dam, you need to look at the value chain. Okay, so that's what we are doing. We are not building just dams. We are building dams with its irrigation facilities, and we are also building refinery. Let me say, okay, we have a refinery plant. We are building a refinery plant where the crops that will be grown under these irrigation facilities will be sent to be processed into products that can be exported out of the country.
Okay, so these districts have different farmers who produce different things.
Yeah.
So are you building your refineries or factories the same way, or how exactly is it going to play out? Because someone may be producing maize, someone may be producing soya beans, someone may be producing peanuts. So how exactly are you going to do it?
Okay, so the main crops that we would like to be grown under the irrigation facilities is corn, sugarcane, cassava. Then when it's harvested, we bring it to the processing plant, which is to be built in Savlugu. There's a community called Tindan in Savlugu. That's where we're putting up the...
Okay, so the processing plant, unlike the irrigation facility, is not attached to the dam.
No.
It is a separate...
Yes. It's a huge plant.
Okay.
at Tindan in Savlugu. So when the crops are harvested, the farmers will transport them to the factory for it to be processed. And we're processing into sugar.
But we already have a sugar factory. Why won't you just send it there? The sugar factory is just sitting there.
Oh, no. The sugar factory is a commander. And what we're doing is in the north. So we cannot transport raw material.
Yeah, probably if you had a good rail network system, it could have been possible, right?
Well, maybe in future our government will start looking into how to build this infrastructure to ensure that some of these things can be done. But for now, we're putting up the processing plant in Savlugu so that we can process these raw materials into products like sugar, like corn oil, and ethanol, to be exported. The plan is that 20% of what we will produce will be for the local market, and then the 80% is exported to the African sub-region and Europe.
Wow, 2080, why that? Why 2080? Well, 20, because the initial thought is that this is supposed to help us deal with the food security threat that we have because we import so much. Yeah. So if you're going to give the local market only 20%, how much of a problem are you solving there?
It's because of the quantities that we are producing. The quantities are huge. And so Ghana alone cannot consume those.
So are these farms already there? These farms you're talking about, sugarcane, cassava, maize/corn, do they already exist? And how are you siting these dams in order to reach these farms? Because what I am understanding from what you're saying is that this is going to be something that's going to be serving a lot of farms, and that's why you're just not recommending people coming in with the pumps. You're building actual irrigation lines, which is why you say $4 million is not too expensive. So how are you selecting the farms? How are farmers benefiting from this project that you say will cut across the northern region?
So usually most of the farmers do like 2 acres of a farm. So each community where we'll put up this multi-purpose dam will have, like I said initially, will have a 180 hectare span, 180 hectare span of the center pivot irrigation system. 180 hectare is a big area. So these farmers can come and grow under the center pivot irrigation system. So you have a dam, you've got in your own land, which the dam will serve. Not that you're providing irrigation for already existing farms. Let me put it this way so you understand, or your viewers can understand. The community makes available a land for us to construct the dam, and also the
lands were given to you by the locals?
The community.
The communities?
Yeah, the chiefs.
In the 44 districts?
Yeah, in all the 44 districts. So when you build a dam and you build irrigation facilities, the farmers can come and cultivate under the irrigation scheme. All right? I've made mention to you that the reason why most of the farmers were doing rain-fed agriculture is because that most of the existing irrigation dams now, when they want to cultivate there, they have to pay fees, water user fees, and they think it's expensive. So this time round, with this facility in place, where they don't have to pay any water user fee, all they need to do is to come there and then grow their crops. And then at the harvest time, they harvest, and once they harvest, we buy from them as well to the factory to be processed. You know, in all these, even as we are looking at food security, we are also looking at the economics of the whole thing. How we can boost our economy with this project. And so that's why we are, like I mentioned to you earlier, that we are exporting about 80% of the products that we will get from the refinery plant, and then the 20% remain. So, so what it is that 20% remaining on the Ghanaian market will ensure that we have import substitution. For instance, sugar. Currently, Ghana is importing about $200 million of sugar annually.
Yeah.
So if we have sugar on the market, it means that government will save this money.
Right, you're right.
Same way with fish, because we're going to use the dam also for aquaculture.
Oh, okay.
So same way with fish. I think fish also about $200 million. And then the corn oil and all that.
This sounds like a really huge project, Emmanuel, but we have to run quickly. I mean, I see that there's a component of electricity production as well. Briefly, just tell me about that, how this feeds into the entire dam or unit concept.
Okay, so as I mentioned to you earlier, the main reason why most of the existing irrigation facilities were not doing well was because of high cost of electricity to run the irrigation systems.
Right.
So we had to develop a system that would generate electricity on site.
And how will that happen?
Okay, so, you know, the idea of the One Village One Dam was for all year round farming and also to for animal drinking, like cattle, to be able to drink. And we said, no. Why don't we bring all the cattle under one roof and put together a dairy farm so that we can use the dairy farm waste to generate electricity? So that's what we are doing.
Okay.
So we use the dairy farm waste to generate electricity through a biogas system. And this electricity is a lot of electricity. At each site, we are doing 1 megawatt of electricity. That's a lot of electricity. And so we use some to drive the irrigation system, and then we'll distribute the rest to the communities. And that's what we call a rural electrification development.
This is a very huge project, and it's going to cost a lot. I mean, we want to see Ghana develop, and so we wish you all the best. But we will be keeping our eyes on these projects, also because we know how things work in this country. So we will be keeping our eyes on this project, and we will be updating you on this partnership between the government of Ghana and the High Limit Group to produce 440 dams across 44 districts in the northern sector of the country. And they also plan on not just putting up these dams or constructing the dams. They want to also have a facility where the proceeds or the yields will be given some more value and exported out of the country. It's a huge project, like I say. Do the math. $4 million per unit for 440 of these across the country. Emmanuel Labi is project head and chief executive of High Limit Group, and he's been explaining the concept to us better. But like I said, we will be monitoring this particular project. When I come back, I'll be telling you about the American Chamber of Commerce in Ghana and the U.S. Embassy, the U.S. Commercial Service, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and the Embassy of Ghana in Washington, D.C., hosting the 2023 U.S. Ghana Business Expo. You want to hear more about that? Do stay. Thank you so much for staying on the AM show. It's me once again, and I'm about to have another conversation that will definitely interest you, so you want to stay with me. We have become a global village. I'm sure you know that by now. And with the current situation as Ghanaians and the fact that our very own finance minister spoke to young people and said, we have no jobs waiting for you. You need to start getting entrepreneurial. Only points to the fact that Ghanaians must begin to expand businesses, expand business ideas, build networks, important networks globally. And how best to do that than the US Ghana Business Expo, and it's happening from tomorrow, in fact tomorrow and the 11th at the Labadi Beach Hotel. But I've been joined by Simon Maji. He's Executive Secretary of the American Chamber of Commerce Ghana. Good morning to you, Mr. Maji.
Good morning.
I was just telling him, just before he came on air, that Maji sounds quite exotic and foreign, but he's actually Ghanaian. So, yeah, just by way of information, if your mind works like mine.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and good morning to all your viewers.
Fantastic.
And I'm actually from Shire Hills.
Okay, Shire
the
Hills.
Republic of Agomeda.
Okay.
I hope you love it.
Oh, I know that. I know Agomeda, Somenya,
Yes.
those areas. Yeah, my people there, Onya Saminyalo.
Yeah.
I said it right, yeah.
Wangebobo.
Okay. So let's talk about the U.S. Ghana Business Expo. We organized this. This is not the first time we're doing this in Ghana. And there are many people who are paranoid about what the interest of the West is really for us as a people. You know, they talk about all these concepts of the West trying through businesses to reinforce dominance and all that. So there are people who are quite laid back about involving the West, in whatever scenario, whether political, economic. But just tell us over the years how beneficial these partnerships have been and why it's important that you continue to have these expos.
Well, I mean, thank you, and I think that's a very brilliant question to ask. But we need to look at it from a globalized context. The world is global. People move around, investment will move around, capital will move around. And so we have to be prepared for the best, from wherever we can get it. And as we know, our own government cannot create all the jobs for us, like you've rightly said. So the private sector must take the lead. But private sector is connections around the world. It's interface between people, between capital, and also moving around the world where they can create value while maximizing their returns or their profit. So it's essential that we look at this from a more globalized perspective. And what is in for Ghanaians? These things are very important because they are creating the partnerships that Ghanaians need, Ghanaian businesses need. Ghanaian businesses are open to working with people around the world. So they don't just make money, but they create a profit which is spent in Ghana. Taxes are paid, skills are transferred. We also have technology transfer. So we build our own local businesses that will become global. And if we want to build global businesses, it's important that we look for partnerships that will carry us there. So these things are important. And that's why we have to look beyond our own shores to work with others so we can get the value we want and they also get the value they want. And it's a win-win situation for everybody around the world.
So, I'm just reminded of a conversation I had with a real estate developer at a program that I moderated for the Design and Technology Institute. It was one on precision quality. And he was telling me about how, most of his career, he had thought about building his company to a certain point where he could sell it off and make profit. Until he met a brother from Nigeria, and when I say brother, you understand what I mean, whose dream was bigger. He actually wanted to build his company to the point where he could buy the highest or the largest competitor on the other side of the world. So I'm thinking that this expo is not only for US businesses to sell their ideas to Ghana, but for Ghanaian businesses to also attempt to have partners in the US. So it's not just a downward or downstream thing or just trickling ideas and concepts from the West to us, but also the flow could be the other way around.
Well, that's very true. So if you look at the theme of the Expo, it's leveraging US-Ghana trade relations to promote growth and prosperity. So we are looking at prosperity for the citizens of our two countries. And who do we have coming? We have the United States Under Secretary for International Trade from the Department of Commerce, leading a delegation of about 30 US businesses that are mainly minority-owned businesses. So folks that are African-American, and it's in the field of cybersecurity and also consumer products. Those from the Ghanaian side, you have companies in oil and gas, you have mining services, you have those in the beverage sector, those in destination management. And of course, the African-American trade associations out of the US, so the diaspora component of it. It's all very important, and it's going to come down significantly well for us. If you look at trade between Ghana and the US, we are talking about $3.7 billion of trade between Ghana and the US. 2.7 billion in favor of Ghana, and then 1 billion in favor of the US. So there's significant trade between our countries. If you look at US investment here, in 2021, we are looking in a region of $421 million. About 100,000 Americans visit Ghana, every year. And the whole world is moving within the digital sphere. There is much for us to learn. We have teaming youth, we have skilled youth. We just need to train them to be able to take advantage of these opportunities. Africa's own digital economy is estimated to be around 115 billion, projected to be over 700 billion by 2050. By 2050, Africans will be more in the world. 1 out of every 4 persons will be an African. So it's important that at this time, we continue to build these partnerships. We encourage more Ghanaian businesses to work with their partners in the US or anywhere around the world where they can acquire the skills, not just the skills, but the ability to run businesses, tap into technology, to expand. After all, Africa is now a great place to do business, but it could be the most perfect place to do business. We have our own continental free trade. And so these partnerships will help us to really build what we need to do to veer into other markets. We export to the US. The US also exports to Ghana. So it's important for us.
Right. So who qualifies to be a part of this program? Who can attend the program? What are the dates and times and basic information we should know about the program?
So this is open to every Ghanaian business. It's open to any Ghanaian who is interested in business. Like I said, we want to encourage those in the ICT, the digital space, cybersecurity, those in consumer products, those in mining, those in oil and gas. Just come over, and it's free. All you need to do is to just register. Go online, www.amchamghana.org. You'll see the expo, register, come over. But when you also show up, we can register you. And it's on the 10th and 11th. So on the 10th, which is tomorrow, we have an opening panel, which is creating a sustainable business.
Okay.
It's very important.
Okay.
And then we have
who are the speakers?
We have Mr. Joe Mensah, who is the Senior Vice President and Head of Ghana Business for Cosmos. We have the CEO of Flutterwave, which is a big African icon fintech. We also have Mr. Peter Dia from All-Star Insurance Brokers. So they will start off the panel. Then we have the keynote speeches. We have the Undersecretary for International Trade, Mary Salago. We have Honorable Katie Hammond, Minister for Trade and Industry. We have the U.S. Ambassador to Ghana. Our own President of the American Chamber of Commerce, Madam Maisha Ibe from Pricewaterhouse. In the afternoon, we have a diaspora panel. So this panel is to connect our brothers and sisters in the diaspora with us and what business we can do. We have Mr. Yofi Grant from the GRPC speaking, Mr. Uwabe Bio from the Office of the President. He's in charge of diaspora affairs, as well as 3 African-American chambers of commerce. And it will be moderated by Mona Boyd from Avis. Mona Boyd is a well-known African-American who's lived there for a very long time. Then on the 11th, what's even more important is we are looking at intellectual property issues in the creative industry in Ghana.
So that's interesting.
Very interesting. From 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on the 11th.
I mean, and just before you go, Nathan, sorry, I had to interject there. How does this interest the U.S. Ghana Business Expo, intellectual property within the creative space?
Well, intellectual property drives everything. I mean, we have to protect people's work. It's important. And we've seen the growth of the African creative industry around the world, especially in the U.S. Africa is now a big exporter of, creative work around the world. So we learning how to protect that craft or work from the beginning is essential so that our creatives can make more money, then pay more taxes to the state. And then they get to keep their name from generation to generation. So that's why it's important for us. And it also creates the culture, people to people. For the first time in a very long while, we now have the opportunity to also export our culture, our understanding of the world, to everybody else. So we want to see that being protected. And that's a very great panel that I'll urge, members from the creative industry to attend.
Yeah.
Well.
So that's on the 11th, right?
That's on the 11th.
Yeah. So if you're somebody within the creative space or who is interested, I mean, this is a conversation that you must be a part of and you must listen to. Reminds me of our folklore board having issues with the representation of our idiosyncratic symbols in some American movies and all that. So this is, it's huge, right?
No,
so
it's
a conversation that we must have.
It is huge. It's important. And we see many people coming up. Africa is at a good place right now. And I think we are on the cusp of something very significant. We just have to take advantage to build the right relationships, and we'll get there.
And I might say that these are some of the few conversations that we have here that gives you that glimmer of hope, because most of the time when we have to talk about what's happening in our country, it's always on the downside. And it's not from a bad place. When it happens, we report, right?
That's true.
So this is good news. So, I mean, your final words as we wrap up the conversation.
Well, we want to grow a lot more of the trade and investment between Ghana and the U.S. I will urge every business person out there to show up on the 10th and 11th. It's free, just register and show up. And we're also grateful to all our partners, to Delta Airlines, to Cosmos Energy, to Avis, to Cargill, and to All Star Insurance, and to the other partners that you mentioned, the U.S. Embassy, the Embassy of Ghana to the United States, our own mother body in the U.S., the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and of course the U.S. Foreign Commercial Service here. And we look forward to having all of you. And thank you to your team as well for being Joy FM and Joy Business for being a great partner to this event.
Right.
So we'll
Thank you so much. What time tomorrow?
It's from 9 a.m.
From 9 a.m. at the Labadi Beach Hotel.
Yes, Labadi.
Thank you so much. That's Simon Makji. He's Executive Secretary of the American Chamber of Commerce, Ghana, and we've been having a very super interesting conversation about the U.S.-Ghana Business Expo 2023. It's now time to bring you our AM Business Ketsi EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank. Now, the National Petroleum Authority says it's deepening stakeholder consultation before the cylinder recirculation model takes off next month. There's more in this report.
The formulation of the cylinder recirculation model is warranted to curtail the frequent gas explosions that recurrently hit the country and also solve the stress consumers go through in filling their cylinders. After a successful implementation of the policy, it is estimated that over 9,000 direct jobs will be created in relation to new jobs. The implementation of the CRM is to ensure that at least 50% of Ghanaians have access to safe, clean, and environmentally friendly LPG by 2030. It is also meant to improve access to LPG and to increase adoption of LPG. Additionally, it is a policy shift to stop unnecessary loss of lives and properties, as well as gas filling stations, mostly due to human error.
Systems side by side. And then as the new policy takes new territory, the old policy sort of shuts down gradually. And then for a particular timeline that we will set for ourselves, will then finally phase out the old system. So yes, currently our monthly consumption of LPG is about 30,000 metric tons. If you put that into the math, 80,000, if our bottling plants are able to produce 80,000 cylinders per day, if you calculate that per the current demand, we need to feed the system about 50,000 cylinders a day. So the capacity is enough, and we think that at full implementation, this is just the beginning. Like we said earlier, we've issued 8 licenses. We have 4 bottling plants that have currently been constructed. We're looking to have more bottling plants come up, and the capacity is going to increase.
Perry Okujeto explained that the model had been well piloted, the system had been streamlined, the infrastructure now in place to ensure the safe delivery and use of LPG across the operational areas.
Because the cylinders have been an investment by a bottling plant, we need to know at every point in time who has it. So it's a simple registration process. You go to an exchange point, you identify yourself, they take your details, and you must have a valid, when you go to a bank to cash a check, you present a Ghana card. If you go to an exchange point, you present a Ghana card. The Ghana card has all your details, has your location, where you live, and all of that on it, so that we can have, or the exchange point can have data, and there can be traceability in case the cylinder goes and for 1 year it doesn't come back. So that is for the registration. And like I said, without, well, apart from Ghana card, if there's another form of identification that gives the exchange point operator comfort. And you know, the exchange points we have are not going to be too different from what we currently have. What will be different is that they are not going to fill the cylinder on site. The cylinders will be delivered from a bottling plant. That is the only thing that is going to change. So usually you will notice that exchange points have a relationship with the community, or outlets have a relationship with the community. I believe the only way you carry your cylinder to Jolo to fill is if you don't have LPG in a local LPG station in your area. So definitely you know each other, they know where you live and all of that. It is a matter of making sure that they keep a record of who has the cylinder at every point in time. And like I said, the subsequent public education and messages that we will craft for your networks will further explain these processes so that citizens can be abreast with how we want to implement this.
On a visit to one of the bottling plants and exchange points, I engaged Sigma Cylinders on their preparedness prior to the implementation of the CRM. Carlos Itonian is the managing director.
We manufacture the LPG cylinder in 4 different sizes: 3 kg, 6 kg, 12.5 kg and 15 kg cylinders. We have been in Ghana for 25 years. The company is fully owned Ghanaian company. We have been providing cylinder manufacturing service for almost 25 years in Ghana.
Right, so right behind me, I could see quite a lot going on. I actually don't have the technical expertise with respect to what's happening there. Talk to me, what's basically happening here?
As you can see, the factory is newly renovated, and we have brought new machines. We work in 4 different countries: in Abidjan, in Iraq, in Lebanon, and in Ghana. We have initiated from Ghana. We are manufacturing the cylinders. If you want, we will go through to the process of manufacturing cylinder. All the process of manufacturing cylinder is done here in our facility in North Industrial Area. And all our workers are Ghanaians. We have more than 100 workers at the moment. And we follow all the safety measures that are put by GSA and MPA.
NPA very soon will be rolling out the cylinder recirculation model. What is the role you guys are playing in this?
We have currently increased our manufacturing production so that we can supply the cylinders needed by MPA because they want to do the CRM. We have also opened the refurbishment center in our facility, which is in a different location but is in the same facility, so that we can take the used cylinder, refurbish them and put them back in the market. So we are under the guidance of MPA. They are implementing the CRM, and we are waiting for it to happen so that we can meet our production targets.
Talking about production targets, with respect to the CRM, how many cylinders will you guys be giving out with respect to that particular program if it starts in September this year? How many are we looking at?
Currently, our yearly production will be 1.2 million cylinders if we work double shifts. But at the moment, as you saw, half of the machines, we are not operating them. We are not in our full capacity. We are just waiting for the CRM to kick off so that we can meet the demands. We have Ghanaian workers. We want the economy to become better for us because all of us have families, and we want our workers, they are proud of belonging to the Sigma family because they have been with us for more than 20 years. And they are proud of it. And we are proud of it ourselves also, as the company is fully Ghanaian owned. Currently, there are no certain values, there are no certain quantities. MPA, they want to enforce it. As you are aware, bottling plants, they will be the ones that will purchase the cylinders. We are in negotiations with them, with the New Gas Quantum, with GOIL, also with Puma, which are Blue Ocean. So they will do the purchasing of the LPG cylinders. We are already in negotiations with them. We are waiting for them to put orders so that we can supply. For us, if you go to our website, you will see that Sigma, we are concerned about the environment. The usage of LPG cylinder and LPG, the gas, is safer for the environment. People are cutting trees to use for charcoal, to use for heating, to use for cooking. These are bad to the environment. The usage of LPG gas is much, much better for the environment, which will save lives in the future. You have the climate change, you have the deforestation. So all these aspects, once you are using the LPG cylinder, you will save the planet eventually.
The provision of a safe working environment, safe equipment, policies and procedures to ensure workers' health and safety is a priority for Sigma. Factory manager explains further on measures to ensure a safe environment.
Now, in the course of the production, we maintain that every worker should be well clothed. As you can see, all of them are well clothed. In terms of the cylinder itself, we have imbibed in all the processes series of safety measures. What do? Right from the top to the middle and to the ends. We ensure that all the cylinders are heat treated so that it doesn't fail at any portion of the product. Now, secondly, the hydrostatic testing at 30 bar ensures that all the cylinders are tested at 30 bar so that make sure the cylinder doesn't fail when it's in use. Secondly, they'll go through the pneumatic testing, as you can see over here, at 8 bar, make sure that the cylinder doesn't leak. So in terms of safety, we are on top of it. The process is taking care of everything. And we also have the quality control measures. Throughout the stage of manufacturing, the processes are checked, documented, and archived. So that in the event of any mishap, we know how we can trace it. So that is basically what we are doing.
Right, so being a factory manager, one of the growing concerns has to do with Ghanaians, how we take good care of cylinders and all that. What is that one word you would want to give to them out there?
Okay, now, you see, most of the cylinders that we have received so far for refurbishments, you will realize that the footring is rotten. It tells you that instead of placing the cylinder on a wooden platform, they are placing it on the bare floor, and that is a number one danger.
I'm sure you want to hear more. Do make time for AM Business at 1 p.m. later today for more on that story on the cylinder recirculation model. But that'll be it for this edition of the AM show. I am grateful that you make time every morning to join Benjamin and I. God willing, we're back tomorrow morning with another edition of the AM show. You know, it's one that puts you at the center of everything. Do stay with us here on your most credible news source. I'm Bernice Abubedu Lansa. Up next is News Desk.